So the marathon stuff, just it's getting to the point where it's starting to feel a little sad. It's starting to just really, it's getting hard to watch. Because like, here's the deal. I played the game at the press event thing that they did, and I thought, I think I had fun. I'd play more of it, and I did once the alpha launched. I played another like 5 to 10 hours, but now I'm good. Like, honestly, even if the game launched tomorrow and I had access for free, I wouldn't need to play more. Like, I feel like I've seen everything the game has to offer, and I played the free alpha, closed alpha thing. So I feel like it was really lacking in content. It needs probably another year. It needs a lot more time. It needs more modes. It needs like bigger environmental events. It needs the ranked mode. It needs that 4th map that they don't want to tell anybody about, but they say is amazing. It just needs more. And that was before all of this happened. And I felt like it wasn't ready yet, and that they were rushing it out because I think PlayStation is kind of forcing their hand. And then this whole art debacle went down, which we all know about at this point. But I thought that this thing that they did was really telling. The fact that Bungie leadership forced them to still do this like AMA thing, play MA, sorry, I thought was so, I think, indicative of how leadership handles things at Bungie. Like, clearly they've not slept a wink in the last 48 hours since this news broke, especially I believe this is the art director. He has not slept a wink. You can tell on his face. And as far as we understand it, this is, according to them, the result of one artist at Bungie years and years and years ago when they first were starting on Marathon that put all of this artwork into like mood boards, into the texture sheets, into all of these different things. And then they used it while they built the game out for years. And allegedly they didn't know about it, right? So if that is true, these guys, I'm sure, could use a break. Like they're not on their best, they're not well rested. There's just many reasons why maybe you delay this play MA, right? There's plenty of reasons why you maybe push it back a week. Hey, we hear you. We're working on fixing the art situation. We're going to delay it. They were going to show gameplay in this thing, and now they're not, because they're stripping it of all of the like textures and stuff that were taken from that artist. So they don't even have gameplay to show at this AMA thing. It's insane why they still did it, but I think that shows just how Bungie leadership is so I don't know, obtuse maybe. I don't even know what you call it. Just uncaring, inconsiderate. I don't even know. But clearly there's a problem with Bungie leadership. And at this point, it seems like everybody at Bungie is really fed up with it. Morale at Bungie is reportedly in free fall over Marathon. New report from Paul Tassi outlines this. Let's see. I've spoken to some current and former employees about Bungie's excuse for the art theft. Studio morale, the possibility of a delay, and some very real changes when it comes to the upcoming presentation and playtesting of the game. Here's what I've learned. Public explanation for the art theft. One ex-employee taking things in 2020 is the same one being given internally at Bungie among rank and file. So they're not telling the public one thing and then telling, you know, internally something else. In the studio, this is their explanation. This is what happened. Sony and Bungie legal are now sorting through this, and there is unlikely to be any new information as all of this continues to unfold. It is not clear how long an audit will take of the assets to remove or find any more plagiarism. It's an expansive enough process to have Bungie not even show any footage at all in its recent live stream. Yeah, it's a bit of an oopsie. Morale is in free fall across all departments, and the vibes have never been worse. Everyone has the same concerns about what happens to Bungie as a result, and as a studio, if Marathon bombs, which is something they absolutely cannot afford, which is true. Bear in mind, again, just a reminder, Sony spent $3.7 billion on Bungie to get Destiny 2, Marathon, and a third project they were working on. The third project has been spun off into its own thing at a different team that's formed by former Bungie employees. Destiny 2 has been losing money for a long time, and so that leaves Marathon. And if Marathon not just underperforms, but flops, it's hard to see an outcome that's good for Bungie. I mean, it's really hard to see any outcome with this that is good. There are not even hints or jokes about a delay from the September release date internally. Internally, they're not even like hinting at it. Oh my God. With that said, it is entirely possible, if not likely, those conversations are happening privately between higher up Sony and Bungie leadership. It's unclear what the plan is to launch the game in a now, quote, actively hostile environment. This is the problem as far as I can see it. There's no way right now, as far as I can come up with in my brain, for them to launch with like good vibes. There is no good vibe with this game. Right now it is radioactive, it's toxic, and yeah, even after the playtests, people were already kind of towards it. They liked the art style, ironically enough. They liked the art style. They liked the cinematics that they did. But all anybody could say is like after that cinematic launched, people were like, yeah, that's really cool. Can we get a single player game with that? Can we get a narrative like linear game like the original like Marathon games? Can we do that? No, it's an extraction shooter. Okay. So already people were not super stoked about like just the game in general. And that was before all of this happened. So now there's very little reason to get super excited for it. Some changes to future plans have been made, or had been made before this new plagiarism development, mainly as a reaction to gameplay footage in the closed alpha. At the start of this month, Bungie pulled the plug on its main Marathon marketing plan, which was going to have a new trailer in June along with the launch of pre-orders. The whole campaign needs to be reworked now. A heavily marketed public beta in August may be changed into a roadmap of public playtests with no actual details set yet. This would align with Bungie's stated multiple opportunities to play before launch rather than just the upcoming beta. Marathon was originally pitched by higher up good old boy Bungie leadership, and as far back as 5 years ago, the devs were telling them what would and wouldn't work and were often ignored. Many have said previously that it needed to have some sort of PvE component, and apparently solo queuing was also a big point of debate as well. All of this between necessary asset auditing, a reworked marketing campaign, and shifting playtest plans scream of a game that's not coming out in 4 months, or at the very least shouldn't be, though there are no indications of that yet. However, at this point, it may just be the case that another 3, 6, 12 months would not fix what ails the game, which is more than just the presentation and some playtesting. But for many, it's questionable core concept wrapped in extremely cool aesthetics. But now they've lost that last bit as a praise point as well. Yeah, it was kind of the one saving grace was people thought the game's art style looked cool. And now it feels weird to praise the game's art style. You know, the one thing everybody's like, yeah, game, but the art style's cool. Now it's like, oh, you like the art style? Okay, well, oh, so there's that. Yeah, they've reportedly scrapped the June marketing plans for Marathon, and you know, we kind of half jokingly threw out like a hypothesis back when we first were talking about the playtests with Marathon, where I was like, you know, there's a conspiracy theory to be explored where Sony is intentionally sending Marathon out to die in a pool of milk. And it was basically based on a couple of key tidbits, which is that the game is pretty transparently not ready for launch. And yet Sony is shoving it out the door and is seemingly unwilling to consider delays, which is something that is also echoed by this reporting. And so it's almost like they want it to fail. And then we looked into some of the other financial stuff where a lot of the like people at Bungie, they have stock options that are set to vest at the end of this year. And so one of the arguments was, hey, maybe Sony is forcing this game out the door so it either fails or succeeds by the end of the year. So if it works, Bungie execs get their big paydays where a lot of them walk away with millions upon millions of dollars. Or if it fails, those executives that Sony, I'm sure, is not too thrilled with, you know, their financial futures look like this as well, because they thought that they had a giant piggy bank in the form of Sony, which they did for a while, but they took advantage of it and then squandered all that money. And so Sony gets one last middle finger to them. We jokingly put that out when all of this started. And now it's like, if they don't delay it, I don't know what other conclusion to draw than that. Like, the only chance this game has at any semblance of success would be to delay the crap out of it by like a year and a half, redo major components of, like, you know, the texture work, some of the art design, things like that. And then they also have to add in like solo queues. They have to add in a good bit more content. They need bigger environmental things. I said earlier on stream, I thought it would be really cool if they had sort of a Helldivers 2-esque meta narrative that they could employ based on player behaviors. There are ways, I think, to get people excited about the game again and for them to frame it as like a comeback. But even then, it's a long shot, and that takes hundreds of millions of dollars when you're talking about multi-year delays to a game on this scale. Very, very difficult to pull off. And that's assuming that their bosses are willing to do that. And I think it's pretty clear Sony doesn't want to. So at this point, I mean, I kind of agree with this Paul Tassi op-ed. It's just over for Marathon. Like, I don't see a realistic outcome where this works. I just don't. As he writes here, I've tried to put this off for a while now, giving Marathon the benefit of the doubt in terms of fixing what ails it and maybe snagging an audience that's large enough to make it at least sustainable. But no, it's over. I can't dispute it anymore. This has probably always been true, but the events of the past week have cemented it. I will get into the live streaming plagiarism and all that later, but this is a long, long list of what's gone wrong in the past, what's currently going wrong, and the future that does not look any brighter. And it's basically, you know, goes through the concept. The entire idea of this game was a mistake. Bungie has said that this came from a bunch of them playing Tarkov a while ago. I heard that among that group, it was one good old boy in leadership who pushed to make this Bungie's biggest non-Destiny project and the hopeful rebirth of a strong IP for the studio, now under Sony, which it assumed would produce another hit like this. It just seems like it was one guy that really liked the idea of doing a Tarkov game because they like Tarkov, and that's where this started and ended. Like, that was the whole concept. And then they talk about how they're trying to make it accessible to new players, which means stripping out some of the hardcore elements, but then the new players don't have a lot of long-term benefit to playing, and there's not a lot of long-term progression because of that. So they're stripping out the things that they really need to make the game engaging, but you know, it just doesn't work. It doesn't work. You can't remove long-term progression to make the game more accessible and then be surprised when people are like, yeah, there's not a lot of long-term progression. It's like, yeah, could have told you that.
Firechild460 donated $10 through Super Chat. A few weeks ago I said, let Bungie cook, it's just an alpha. Well gang, the kitchen is on fire and emergency services are on the way.
Yeah. Unironically, they started an oil fire and now the entire neighborhood's burning down. Because it's not just their house. If this goes down, Destiny goes down, any hopes of like a future Destiny 3 or something probably go out the window. Like, they're burning down the entire neighborhood with this. It's wild. Like, it's wild. Thank you for the 10. That's very generous. Yeah, none of this was helped. And this is perhaps the other thing that's crazy. None of this was helped. That at the exact same time as Marathon's alpha, it was interrupted by the Arc Raiders alpha, a much more traditional extraction shooter and a much better one, which I can also stand by.
Christopher Burnett donated $9.99 through Super Chat. How has Sony not done a hostile takeover of Bungie by now? If I was CEO of Sony, I'd cancel every Bungie in development, fire almost everyone and rebuild Bungie with new talented and
competent staff. They've already started to do that. You remember they rearranged a bunch of it. They took a bunch of devs out, moved them to other positions. They took that team that was working on the third game, moved them outside, did a different thing. I think they already did that. And I think they're just preparing, like they were hoping that maybe Marathon could pop off. But at this point, I think they're just preparing to scrap it. If they don't delay it, I don't see any other explanation than they're just going to scrap it. They're going to launch it. When the player numbers are abysmal, they'll let it run for a week or two. Then they'll shut it down. They'll write the whole thing off, all 400, 500 million of it. And they'll shut down the studio and they'll just move on. They might still keep, Destiny functioning and running, and they'll just have a support team for that. But I think they'll get rid of every Bungie executive, everybody. Because here's the thing. I think if they honestly are expecting to get rid of all of the executives at Bungie as part of this, they got rid of one, the former director of Marathon that Joe Ziegler replaced. They got rid of him because of allegations of office misconduct and stuff. But they faced a lawsuit as a result of that because that guy was expecting like $50-60 million paydays and he didn't get them as a result of his firing. And I'm sure that there's other massive paydays for some of these executives coming up. So if Sony is planning on getting rid of them, you have to remember for Sony, they're like, okay, they're going to sue us for wrongful termination. So we need to give them enough rope to hang themselves, and then we get to fire them, and we can say, we gave you all the time you needed. You're the one that screwed up the art style. You're the one that had a game incomplete. We told you you were launching at the end of 2025 and you failed to deliver. And so when those lawsuits are filed, they can go to court and have all this lined up and win those cases. So I think that that's also a component of this, is that Sony's like, we'll let it play out. You know, they've got the executives on those hooks, and they're letting the line run out until the fishy gets tired, and then they're going to reel them in, you know? It's crazy. But yeah, I mean, the fact that Marathon looked so bland, and then in Arc Raiders, we had this. If you didn't play it, just watch. Okay, there's a giant robot down here looking at the player, just so you know. It's pretty cool. There's nothing even that exciting that happens in the entirety of Marathon, okay? Like, nothing. Like, Arc Raiders, actually kind of crazy. It's actually kind of crazy, okay? Really good time. And everybody who played the alpha had a really good time. Had a really, really good time. So I think that also made Marathon feel all the worse, because it's like people, for example, people were complaining that that there was no proximity chat. Guess what Arc Raiders has? Proximity chat. People were frustrated that Marathon didn't have solo queues. Guess what Arc Raiders has? Solo queues. Like, everything that you could point to Marathon and be like, it's missing X, Y, and Z, Arc Raiders had and did better. And so it just made the game look all the worse. Like, it really, really did. It was more polished, more fun, more expected features found in extraction shooters. All you have to do is look at the fact that Arc Raiders player count went up every single day of its alpha, where Marathon's almost always went down. By the end, it was sub 20% of what it started with. Twitch viewers were even worse, going from 150,000 at launch as big streamers tried it, crashing to 1,000 to 3,000 viewers later near the end, where big chunks of that might have even been 1 or 2 Destiny
Vendor
streamers
the
alone.
Offender donated $10 through Super Chat. Who was the creator that consulted on the game when it first started development?
Dr. Lupo. He's the one that was consulting on it. He said going back 5 to 6 years, when it was like 4 people and a whiteboard working on it. Yeah, Lupo was a very, very nice guy to me and everybody else at the event. Very nice guy. But he recently found himself in some hot water because he cheated in a chess event like 2 weeks ago. It was just like, it wasn't even close to. It was like, he was playing a game, and you guys know me. I used to play in chess tournaments all the time. Like, I love me some chess. But he went from like hanging his queen like here, and then he proceeded to play engine perfect moves nonstop for like 30 moves straight, which this isn't a surprise to anybody. If you have a rating of 600, I'm glad you're trying the game and you're getting familiarized. But like a 600 rated player, like, I think I was rated 600 when I was 6 years old. And that's not to like pat myself on the back or anything. That's just to say that, like, when you're 6 years old, you are going to not play like a perfect AI machine. Like, you're just not. Okay, you're going to be making lots of mistakes, like hanging your queen. But he proceeded, after hanging his queen, he pulled up a second monitor thing and started looking at it occasionally, and proceeded to make perfect moves nonstop and eventually come back and win. And especially like unintuitive moves that a 600 player would not do, juggling all sorts of things. Like, your average 600 player is not going to play Knight C2. He's not going to play Knight C2. Freeing up the bishop, going after G7, attacking the bishop, preparing rook E1, protected by the knight once the bishop moves back. Like, no 600 players playing Knight C2. But he proceeded to just play perfect moves nonstop. And so initially he said, no, it's fake, it's not real. Yeah, and then you can see he ends up winning. Bishop D5, no 600 rated players playing Bishop D5, leaving the knight on C7 hanging. Like, come on. Come on, dude. I feel like lower rated players don't realize how obvious it is when you cheat in chess. But once you know kind of what you're doing in chess, it's really obvious. Okay, it's really, really obvious. You play chess, yeah, all the time. That's a chess set back there. That's not just like a piece of nothing. That's a big ass chess set. I have a box full of chess trophies from back in the day I think in my garage. Might be in the attic, I'm not sure. But yeah, all of this to say, anyway, that's the guy that consulted on this, okay? We went down a rabbit hole, okay? We went down a rabbit hole. With all this, I think it's just, with Marathon, it's just a game that nobody really wanted to begin with. And then you show like a really cool cinematic that people do like, but all anybody can think of is, yeah, we love that. Can we have that? Can we have like a cinematic narrative game, first-person shooter? Like the original Marathon with this art style in this world. But no, it's an extraction shooter. And it's a mistake that like Sony also made with Concord. Because you remember when they first did this, they showed off this cinematic trailer. People were like, oh, it's like their own version of Guardians of the Galaxy. Hot sauce guy. Love hot sauce guy. Weird blue gorilla with red face. Love that guy. People are like, you know what, I'm interested in this. And then it turns out to be a hero shooter. What? And it's a similar thing with Marathon, where they show a really cool cinematic, but then it's an extraction shooter that's being rushed out the door. It's a repeated issue at Sony, is that they keep doing this kind of thing. They don't seem to be learning their lesson. So again, my perspective is that if they put Marathon out in September and they don't delay it, I can't see any other explanation or any justification for that choice other than Sony basically wants to just see this thing die, probably because they want to clean house on the executive level, and I don't blame them for wanting to do that at this point, but they probably want to clear house or clean house because of that. And my assumption would be that they're going to do that to avoid problematic lawsuits, because they can be like, no, we told them they had to launch this game. The game launched terribly. They can make an argument in court that the whole company was basically defunct at that point, so they decide to shut down the company before those executives get the chance to redeem their stock options. And then Sony doesn't have to pay out $50 million in stock to a bunch of people that lost them billions, which I kind of would respect it if Sony were that petty. They're like a multi-billion-dollar company, and they're like, yeah, just because they screwed us over so much, we're going to force them to shove this out the door. It's going to flop. We're going to shut down the studio, fire all of them, and then they don't get their retirement. Like, it's so petty, but it kind of seems like that's what's happening. So, you know, I respect them for it nonetheless, but we'll see if that actually is what's happening. Again, if they delay it, there's at least a chance, still probably only 1%, maybe, like very, very slim, but there's at least a chance.
Jimbo404 donated $10 through Super Chat.
Thank you, Jimbo.
Is Sony banking on Destiny Rivals to recoup a lot of their initial investment? I know gacha is a huge market, but do you think will it be able to break through?
I mean, I'm sure it'll make money, because mobile games make a lot of money, especially in recognizable IP. As for whether it I don't think that makes 3.7 billion. So they won't have to pay. No. So what we're talking about, Darth Artemis, just so we're clear, is that $3.7 billion is the entire package for acquiring the company. As a result of that giant package, giggity, there's a few different components of it. So parts of it, you know, might be paying off the lease of the building. So maybe the lease on the building, or buying the building, or whatever else. Buying out the IP might be another big chunk. You have to pay for that. You might also be buying out the contracts of various employees. Like, there's all sorts of different things built into that $3.7 billion sum, which is this total box, right? But then certain parts, like this yellow chunk, would be things like stock options. So they say to Bungie executives, we'll pay you each like 50 million if you stay on, and in 3 years or 5 years, you've reached these profitability targets. So if you're making money, if the company is healthier than ever, if you launch Marathon and it reaches this amount of profitability, or sells this many copies, or reaches this Metacritic score, whatever the standards are that they could put in there, they could put in whatever they want. But they have these standards and definitions of what they need to do to achieve this. And what the conspiracy theory basically is that Sony has a bunch of these going out to executives at Bungie, and they're really pissed that they've basically wasted all of this money at this point, and they feel misled and lied to and deceived. So the conspiracy theory, allegedly, is that they're going to basically screw over the Bungie executives by forcing them to put Marathon out in September, so they don't have the ability to achieve the standards that were outlined, so they don't have to pay them these stock options. So the Bungie executives don't get their big payday, which would be really funny. Would be really, really funny if that's what's happening. Likely, it's not. Most of the Bungie executives have already made bank, but it would be really, really funny if they found a way to screw over the executives that basically screwed them out of $4 billion. I guess time will tell. Time will tell. Ex-Bungie dev says Marathon leadership was, quote, extremely toxic and humiliating to work with. Bungie leadership needs to be gutted completely. Let's see. Spirit posted on Blue Sky saying, as a former Bungie employee who worked on Marathon, I feel for those still at the studio. Working with engineering / Marathon leadership was extremely toxic and humiliating. I won't speak about the rest, but Bungie leadership needs to be gutted completely. They worked as a senior software engineer from June of 22 to May of 24. Per his LinkedIn profile. His comments shed more light on what appears to be a deeply troubled work environment. In his own words, he described the daily reality of working under leadership as extremely toxic and humiliating, making it clear that the issues were not just about the project's direction, but how the teams were treated on a personal level. This isn't the first time he's been open about his experience at Bungie. Last year, after the studio laid off more employees, he said he left Bungie because, quote, their leadership is the worst I've worked with. Rampant micromanagement, frequent toxicity and violations of their core values, and no ability to execute on their multi-franchise vision. Oh, every day was a fight for autonomy and trust. Every day was someone telling me I'm not allowed to speak on any issue or problem in a professional tone. Every day was someone telling me my industry experience didn't matter and that some failed CEO knows best as our sub-area lead. Oh! Hold on, let him cook. Let him cook. It was on our minds since the last layoffs in October of 23. We asked Pete, and his response was that it was a lever he'd pull again. They need to flush out leadership completely. My team was excellent, but it felt like everything else prevented us from doing anything meaningful. He also pointed out that repeated layoffs have only pushed the studio to rely more on contractors and even AI, making things even more difficult for the full-time staff. Quote, so when I hear that they laid off another round of my talented colleagues and friends, I feel angry. They're not at fault. They're not the ones who need to be canned. And every round only strengthens their resilience and or reliance on contractors and AI. No joke. I mean, I don't know what they're using AI for. Maybe just to help them with coding, because this is a programmer, it seems, an engineer, senior like engineer or whatever. But I mean, it jives with what everybody else has heard. Everybody else has heard that the workplace is fairly toxic and the leadership sucks, and it seems like that's just more and more confirmed. And it really, really is just shocking how the mighty fall. He took my thing. Red flag, red flag.
Spin and create intricate webs. Explore oversized rooms full of delightful surprises and accomplish a list of tasks, from simple chores to crazy skill testing challenges. Bake cookies, tidy up a messy room, print important documents in the office, and maybe even catch a thief. With enough creativity, there's nothing you can't achieve. In a webbing journey, the whole house is your playground, and the only limits are your imagination. our physics sandbox game about a tiny spider with big dreams. This adorable 8-legged critter is on a mission to help their favorite humans around the house. You might be small, but there's no task too big when you can weave, spin, and create intricate webs. Explore oversized rooms full of delightful surprises, and accomplish a list of tasks, from simple chores to crazy skill-testing challenges. Bake cookies, tidy up a messy room, print important documents in the office, and maybe even catch a thief.
When Alexei Leonov made the world's first spacewalk in 1965, it was hailed as yet another great success for the USSR in the space race against America. It was only after the fall of the Soviet Union that the West found out that whilst it may have been made to look like a success by the Soviet press, it was in fact teetering on the edge of disaster from the moment Leonov stepped out of the airlock to the point when the crew were rescued from a desolate location in a frozen forest. In 1961, Yuri Gagarin orbited the Earth to become the first human being to travel into outer space. Immediately on his return, Gagarin toured the world again, but this time grinning to international crowds as a celebrity ambassador for the Soviet Union. The Russians were apparently winning the space race, with 6 Vostok manned missions between 1961 and 1963. However, the pressure was on. The next Soviet space program had to maintain this momentum. The first plans to adapt the Vostok capsule were originally named Advance, and eventually would become to be known as Sunrise, or in Russian, Voshod. In America, the Gemini mission was aiming to fly multi-crew missions, and astronaut Ed White was in training to make the first spacewalk, or extravehicular activity, or EVA. Sergei Korolev, the designer in charge of the Soviet space program, believed they could still beat the Americans to the punch. Adapting the Vostok single-seat design, the first Voshod capsule squeezed 3 couches at 90 degrees angles to the central spacecraft controls. The capsule was so cramped that the crew had to adhere to a strict diet just to fit in their seats. Designers considered every way to save weight and space. For example, the ejection seat mechanism was removed. This meant that if anything went wrong in the first 2.5 minutes after launch, there was no way out. This was undoubtedly a risky setup. Voshod's rocket was also adapted, a larger version of the R7, uprated to reach the highest ever manned orbit. But the first flight of Voshod in October 1964 was a success, and in the first months of 1965, Voshod 2 was prepared and readied at the Baikonur Cosmodrome, Kazakhstan. On the morning of March 18, 1965, Voshod 2 lifted off, again setting records for speed and altitude in a manned space flight. Upon reaching orbit, cosmonaut Pavel Belyayev inflated the fabric airlock, a 7-minute process, after which Alexei Leonov climbed out to gain the first unencumbered view of the Earth from 475 kilometers, 295 miles in space. Leonov attached an external camera to film the historic spacewalk and appears carefree on the footage. But off camera, the first maneuvers were clumsy. As he pushed himself away from the spacecraft, he immediately entered a spin, jolting to a stop at the end of his 5-meter, 17-foot tether. After a few moments, Leonov noticed that his spacesuit was becoming misshapen. It was unexpectedly ballooning in the vacuum of space. His hands and feet were slipping out of the boots and gloves, and he realised that it might soon become impossible to re-enter the narrow airlock. He only had about 5 minutes of daylight left before the craft would be on the night side and it would become totally dark outside. Without referring to ground control, Leonov made the decision to slowly vent air from his suit until there was less than half the pressure remaining. But then he ran the risk of suffering from decompression sickness. The low pressure worked and the suit regained its correct size. Leonov finally pulled himself into the airlock headfirst when he should have gone in feet first, causing him to struggle as he tried to turn around in the narrow airlock. This extra struggling caused his body temperature to soar, approaching the danger zone for heat stroke. Eventually, Leonov made it back into the capsule. Humankind had walked in space for the first time, and ground control radioed their congratulations. Leonov's relief must have been palpable. In a recent interview, he revealed that his spacesuit had been fitted with a suicide pill in case he wasn't able to make it back in. However, the danger was far from over. After Belyayev jettisoned the airlock, he discovered that the hatch wouldn't seal properly. And worse, Voshod's automated climate control system was trying to compensate by increasing the oxygen pressure in the capsule. In this super oxygenated environment, any spark could ignite an unstoppable fire. The very scenario which had killed Valentin Bondarenko 4 years earlier as he was in training to become a cosmonaut, and what would go on to kill the crew of Apollo 1 in 1967. But Voshod 2 was lucky. There was no spark, and the cosmonauts worked to lower the temperature and humidity, slowing the rise in the oxygen pressure. It wasn't the end of the problems with the mission. Voshod was fitted with an automated re-entry system, but it failed to work. On the next orbit, the crew had to make a manual re-entry burn instead, something no one had done before and would give them little control of where they would land. They made the decision to try and land in the taiga, a vast, almost uninhabited forest in the far north of Russia. The Voshod was so cramped that after the re-entry procedure was started, it took 46 seconds for the two men wearing their spacesuits to return to their seats to restore the craft's centre of mass. This 46-second delay changed their trajectory and pushed the craft 386 kilometers from its intended landing point. As the spacecraft began re-entry, the service module failed to separate, causing Voshod to tumble back and forth until finally the connecting straps burned up in the heat of re-entry. During its descent, Voshod 2 flew right over Moscow's Red Square. Leonov joked to Belyayev, "We could land there if you want," before the craft flew further north and finally landed at 9:02 GMT on March the 19th in the thick, snowy forests of the Ural Mountains. As re-entry had been significantly off course, no one at ground control actually knew where they were. The crew had to spend the night in the woods in minus 25 degrees C as they waited for their emergency radio transmissions to be picked up and their position located. The capsule's heating system also failed to work, and Leonov's spacesuit was full to his ankles with sweat. He later said it was so bad that he'd lost 6 kilos during the flight. Wringing the moisture from their clothes as best they could, the cosmonauts walked for wolves until the recovery crew arrived the next day. But the area was so heavily forested that the helicopter had to land 9 kilometers away, and the rescuers had to ski to the Voshod 2 craft with warm clothes, food, and of course film cameras. Despite being hailed internationally for its success, the numerous failures of the Voshod 2 led to the cancellation of the program. Leonov's famous spacewalk effectively marked the end of the Soviet supremacy in space. The head of the Soviet space program died unexpectedly a few months later in 1966, but the OKB-1 Design Bureau pushed on to develop the Soyuz, a much more capable orbital vehicle, which was first operated in 1967 and is still in use today, and has proven itself to be the most reliable long-term ride into orbit to date. So thanks for watching, and I'd just like to remind you about the Curious Droid Facebook page. The link is in the channel page, and I'd also like to thank all our patrons for their ongoing support, and if you would like to support us, then please visit our Patreon page showing in the link now. So as always, thanks for watching, and please subscribe, rate and share.
Yeah, Andor did pretty
A lot of the people that are making like negative comments about Joe Biden having cancer, you just look like an asshole. It's an 83-year-old man that clearly has cognitive decline, halfway in the grave already. You're like grave dancing, like what are you doing?
Making fun of cancer is disgusting. Also, nobody's making fun of cancer. We're all on cancer's side here. Against Biden, no one's making fun of the cancer here. We're making fun of Genocide Joe. Realign your priorities, man.
The MSM is already laundering the reputation of a war criminal who oversaw the genocide of Palestinians, whose selfish nature allowed Trump to win a second term. Joe Biden is an awful monster. Prostate cancer doesn't change that. I mean, For people that are so focused on optics, somehow end up always looking like assholes. These are on the tolerant left. Yeah, it's like, the thing is, he's going to be dead, so it doesn't matter what he did, right? I mean, that's it. That's it. It doesn't matter. It's over. Literally, it's fucking over. It's like, really, did Trump comment on it? He did. I'll read what Trump said. Melania and I are saddened to hear about Joe Biden's recent medical diagnosis. We extend our warmest and best wishes to Jill and the family, and we wish Joe a fast and successful recovery. Let's see here. He ain't recovering. I don't know if he is or not. I'll watch this short video about this.
Very unlikely that someone could get annual checkups and not notice a PSA elevation over the past, but this is what I typically would see in a VA hospital, where a patient hasn't had medical attention in 10 years, presents to an emergency room with bone pain, and then they find that it's metastatic prostate cancer. But in the modern age of medicine, especially the fact that he was a former president, he had intensive state-of-the-art, care where we can see prostate cancer, 10 years in the past. So this is, it's very unusual to hear that someone has prostate cancer where they're annually being followed up. And the fact
the odds are it's probably a lot more than annual if you're the president and you're over 80 years old, right? I mean, what do you really think they're only doing it once a year? Like, come on.
We just find it at a Gleason 9 is just pretty much unheard of in this day and age of medicine. Even in the, even in the inner city populations, we wouldn't see it.
So you're saying even in a medically neglected population, it would be surprising to have a surprise diagnosis with a Gleason score of 9. So you're saying that certainly as he was serving in the Oval Office, you believe that he knew that he had prostate cancer, and even potentially as he was running in 2020 before he assumed office?
Well, most likely he had prostate cancer for a long time, and the aggressive prostate cancer such as this at age 80 grows over a long period of time. I mean, usually...
Yeah, there's a lot of people like, this is what my dad told me at least, is that there's guys that get prostate cancer and the doctor's like, you're going to die from something else anyway. Don't worry about it.
Takes from the first diagnosis of prostate cancer to spread would take 5 to 10 years, even in the most aggressive form. It's just, to me, it seems very surprising that the first diagnosis would be a metastatic diagnosis, especially Gleason 9 cancer, without having his PSA history. I mean, I would like him to get to release the PSA history right now to see what it was. I mean, I'm talking from an area of kind of not as much information as I would like to have.
And it is not. It is not standard. We were looking for a PSA score to be released as part of these public.
Who the fuck cares about this? They covered up dementia, which is 10 times worse. Well, I don't know. I mean, like, I guess, I mean, they're both bad. I mean, I think really the reason why people care is that it is more evidence that points in the same direction, that it is very obvious that there was problems with this guy, and the entire media apparatus, as well as the government, actively tried to pretend like there wasn't. I think that's really where the conversation is. That's what's really going on here. So this is like, it's not that this is the whole graph, but this is just another point on the graph. And the line is still going in the exact same direction.
Potential health reports. We didn't get Trump's most recently either. I want to ask very quickly, so much has been made of his apparent cognitive decline. Is there a possibility that either the cancer itself or any treatments he was undergoing in secret could affect cognitive function of a person?
I'm sure it could have.
Yeah, absolutely. Because what happens is when prostate cancer becomes, like say you get treated for prostate cancer and then the prostate cancer recurs, what you would do is you would start someone on a kind of a testosterone blocking hormone such as Lupron. And because Lupron acts to lower your testosterone, it gives you kind of like symptoms of depression, lower energy, fatigue. So there's a lot.
That's interesting. Very interesting.
of things that go with being on Lupron treatment. So Lupron is a class of medicine that just castrates, chemically castrates someone so that the prostate cancer doesn't spread. And so Lupron was likely used in Joe Biden.
So to be very clear, you believe he was silently, secretly battling this for at least 5 years?
Well, I think that's yet to be seen. I mean, it would be very surprising, like I said earlier, for him to...
I don't know. Would the group of people that hid other medical realities also hide a medical reality? Ah, jeez, dude, I wonder. Ah, man, who knows?
Have prostate cancer at Gleason 9 spread to bone without... without being neglected medically. So the fact that he was seen medically every year, it's just very surprising. I mean, his PSA must be over 50 at this point, if not a lot more, just because of bone mets, is a sign that it's very aggressive and spreading to other parts of
somebody says there's no way therapy for prostate cancer induces dementia. It's not possible. Nobody said that. You're missing the point completely.
Body. So I think there's definitely evidence that he probably knew about this for a while.
Yeah, let's see if there's any more information about this, etc. And cancer, this is he posts about as well. Cancer touches us all, so as many of you are in the strongest and broken places. Thank you for lifting us up and love and support. I hope now they can leave this man alone. Just let him fucking retire. Stop trying to drag him out to say that Donald Trump is bad. Like, just give him a fucking break, man. Yeah, holy shit. And let him die. But yes, let him retire. He's got a very small amount of time left, probably. Like, just let the guy fucking rest. Holy shit. The cat's big mad. The cat is mad, bro. Look at the cat. God damn. The cat knows, bro. He's big mad as fuck. Yeah, everybody else is posting. Cynical thing I've seen in American politics. Truly, Biden is stage 4 cancer. Is in hell. They just caught it now. Yeah, they knew. They didn't want to say it. The same as they knew that his brain was fried. And it's Puppet. Yeah, it's really, really fucking sad, man. It's awful. And it's also really funny for me to see that, a lot of people, like all of the, even people that disagree with them, etc., are generally pretty positive about it. And then you have a handful of people that are, what do you call it? Is this?
Does the president have the stamina, physically and mentally, do you think, to continue on even after 2024?
Asking me this question. Oh my gosh, he's the president of the United States. I can't even keep up with him.
The most difficult part about a meeting.
Now, do you know where, as far as I know, both of these people are right now? Journalist. Yep.
United States. I can't even keep up with him.
The most difficult part about a meeting with President Biden is preparing for it, because he is sharp, intensely probing, and detail-oriented and focused.
I can testify because I've been working very closely with this president for the past 2 years. I've been knowing him for 30 years. And I'm telling you, this guy's tough. He's smart. He's on his game.
Joe Biden has a vision. He has knowledge. He has a strategic thinker.
The president is focused. He's detail-oriented. He's always thinking about the big picture.
He is engaging. He is capable. He has an incredible record as president.
And I'm often with him on foreign trips. He's at the top of his game.
So he has a vision. He has knowledge. He has judgment. He has a strategic thinking.
Isn't it crazy that, like, one of the main Democrats is this crazy fucking, like, 85-year-old woman that apparently gets drunk on plane rides and has more plastic surgery than Madonna and dyes her hair so she looks like a 30-year-old lizard? Like, it is really kind of fucking funny. Bro, and she's still, like, I mean, and again, it's like, if you ever try to, like, hit a roach or something, or cut a roach in half, and then the roach is still going after the roach is cut in half, like, you got to admire the will to survive. Like, I admire this, bro. Like, she does not give up, bro. She's fucking multimillionaire. Yeah, they even had, she is so far, like, in the game that they actually are making an act against her about, like, I think it's like insider trading or something like that. Is she really 85? Yep, 85 years old.
I, met with the president,
Yep.
I don't know, 5 or 6
She's older than Bernie Sanders. Keep that in mind.
weeks ago, and he seemed fine to me.
I have complete confidence in the president. I have watched him expertly guide meetings of staff and cabinet members. I could not have more confidence in the president.
I would just tell you that I meet frequently with the president, and every single time I meet with him, he is just fine.
But he is, again...
What if the truth is that actually all of them are telling the truth, and they all think Joe Biden is smart, and it's because they're all also retarded? Because they could all be retarded, so it's like, in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. So that could also be the case too.
Knowledgeable, wise.
Incredibly sharp, incredibly probing, incredible command of the details.
He is sharp. He is on top of things.
There is nothing to these challenges, these suggestions that somehow he's not sharp and he's not capable.
We see Joe Biden up close. We know how attuned he is to the issue.
And you're going to see how smart he is and the experience he has. I say his age is an asset.
Aha! He's wise.
Yes, he's wise. He has wisdom. He has experience.
And his experience, because of his age and his wisdom, has been invaluable
It's
to
actually true. I heard he actually got PTSD from seeing the assassination of Trump. It reminded him of, when it happened to Abraham Lincoln, and also whenever he was there and it happened previously to Caesar.
this country.
A lot of countries, people who've been in office a longer period of time are praised for their wisdom.
I have seen a lot of 72-year-olds not as capable as this 80-year-old.
It is hard for us to keep up with this president.
His mental acuity is great. It's fine. It's as good as it's been over the years. He's fine. All this right-wing propaganda that his mental acuity has declined is wrong.
And this kind of sense that he's not ready for this job is just a bucket of BS that's so deep, your boots will get stuck in.
What do you think the odds are that they just found out that he had cancer 2 days ago? Yesterday. What do you think the odds are, right? I mean, we're really trying to act like this is a possibility? I mean, I'm pretty sure it's not. I did see this. This was... so I thought this was funny.
Damn you! You think you can just back out because you're scared? Cool bar, huh? This place is for mourning. I'm not gonna leave. Not until he comes out of here and lets me fight him. He can't do that. I'm gonna beat you down, you punk! You hear me? Who do you think you are, huh? Dirty punk! Who am I gonna fight now? Who am I gonna fight? He's gone! No! You're supposed to be here for me.
The funniest thing about this is that there's a certain amount of this that's actually very endearing. I don't know what there is about it, but this is very endearing in a way, right? I'm crying, yeah.
Strauss Zelnick went on CNBC and...
Hey everybody, how's it going? Oh, and hope you're having a lovely day. Welcome to today's episode of To Catch a Predator. I'm your host, Chris That was last week. Welcome to today's episode of How You're Getting Effed. I'm your host, Louis Rossman. If you're a new subscriber from the BWE video, hi, pleasure to meet you. I'm Louis Rossman, and we discuss right to repair and right to own on this channel. Right to repair, the fact that many companies place artificial barriers in place of you being able to fix what you bought and paid for. Right to own, manufacturers having cloud-connected devices that allow them to disable them remotely, even though you bought and paid for it, making it very unclear whether or not you actually own it. Today we're going to be focusing on Nintendo's change to their end-user license agreement in terms of service. Honestly, the change in their terms of service and their end-user license agreement is not something that I consider to be bad or newsworthy. What I consider to be newsworthy is the response to it. And that's what we're going to focus on in this video, because it's the cultural change that needs to happen in order for this stuff to stop occurring that I want this channel to inspire. There's one portion that everybody is up in arms about. It's you acknowledge that if you fail to comply with the foregoing restrictions, Nintendo may render the Nintendo account services and/or the applicable Nintendo device permanently unusable in whole or in part. If I log on to their services and I start screwing around with other players and cheating in video games, them banning me from their services is completely understandable. I would even understand them banning me by hardware ID. The problem is when they say that they were going to brick my device in a manner where it will be permanently unusable, even if I would like to use it in single-player mode with any of my games. Simply because you do not like what I've done with my device does not mean that you have the right to disable my device. I think that that's wrong. There are people that are going to say that this is rage bait. Why is anybody bothered by this? And in my opinion, that's the real news. Nintendo doing something that everybody else is doing at this point that is anti-consumer as a large company, I expect it at this point. But what I don't expect are users to be okay with it. And this is the part we're really going to argue in this video. This is the top voted comment. It is also almost twice as upvoted as the original post. This is nothing new. The 3DS said the same thing. Number of 3DSs bricked by Nintendo? Exactly 0. This new user agreement is effed up. This was removed. And the top comment, which has 87 upvotes. Are you listening to rage bait YouTubers again? You know that's not healthy for you. The only manufacturer that I've ever known to act on this clause in their EULA is phone companies that the phone is reported stolen. Nintendo has had it since the Wii U and the 3DS and never used it. Even with caught pirates, they do ban the in-console from online use, though. Your life will continue the exact same way as before, and this new user agreement will have 0 effect whatsoever on your life. That's not what some random guy on YouTube said. A YouTuber would never say something just for clicks, would they? I look forward to seeing that in my comments as well, in spite of the fact that I encourage my audience to use AdBlock as often as possible after writing a 900-page guide on how to avoid ads in every single portion of your life, which is freely available, and not having a single sponsor on my channel over the past 13 years. You will see that in comments everywhere, because the people will not be addressing the arguments that I make. They will make assumptions as to why I made them, and then use those to discredit the actual argument, which is not an argument. It's not that Nintendo said that they're able to do this. It's that people are actively attacking anybody that pointed this out in their terms of service. The first concern with regards to whether or not companies are going to act on this. Many companies already have. If I were to go over every company that's done this, this video would be 3 hours long. Whether we're talking about a thermostat manufacturer that performs psychological experiments on its users, a $400 baby monitor that no longer works unless you pay a monthly fee for it that was not announced at the time of purchase, or a television that stops allowing you to change the source and select your HDMI port unless you agree to forced arbitration after a data breach that affected 15,000 users. Many companies that have the ability to brick your device will brick your device, and sometimes they'll do that even when it's not in the original terms of service, which is why it is concerning when you see other companies that are prominent, that have a reputation for not being very nice to their customers in this way, putting this into their terms of use. Next up, we're going to go over the forced arbitration clause. Forced arbitration says that if you want to sue them in a court of law because they've done something wrong to you, you're no longer allowed to do that. It limits your 7th Amendment rights under the Bill of Rights of the Constitution of the United States. And for some reason, this is legal. If they've screwed up in some way, if they've done something like, I don't know, release a console where the joysticks don't work, and they're not covering it under warranty for you, and they're not covering a large group of people under warranty, you can enter a class action lawsuit. And the class action lawsuit can force them to reimburse you or release extended warranty programs. Forced arbitration means that you're not allowed to go to court. Rather, you're going to go through a process called arbitration. Arbitration is where the manufacturer, like Nintendo, hires a group of people that are going to decide who is right and who is wrong. So imagine having a court, but where the judge and everybody involved are all paid by Nintendo rather than taxpayers. Who do you think is going to win? This is a clause that is always written in a very weaselly way. If you want to opt out of it, you have to go to 16J, even though you can hit agree to the terms of service by clicking agree on the console or on Nintendo's website. If you want to opt out of this complete bastardization of the Bill of Rights, you have to send them written notice to Nintendo of America at this particular address within 30 days. This is paper mail. Such notice must include the name of each person opting out, contact information for each person, and the email address registered to your Nintendo account. If you send timely written notice containing the required information, then the arbitration requirement will not apply to you. You may ask, why is it that a company that has been online for over 25 years, that has the ability to send me terms that I can accept over the internet on my device, is asking me to send them paper mail in order to opt out of an abusive terms of service? Because they want it to be as difficult as possible for you to opt in to your rights that you shouldn't have to opt into. The Bill of Rights is not an opt-out, opt-in thing. It's supposed to be there for all of us. There is no explanation explanation for why you have to send paper mail for this, rather than have a disagree or opt-out button right next to the agree button on your console or on the website, other than they are screwing with you and making it more difficult in the hopes that you will not opt out. Now, you may think, who cares about class action lawsuits? I don't really care about having checks on my refrigerator for 53 cents every time there's a data breach at Visa. Point taken. However, there are many manufacturers out there that will not take accountability or responsibility for the flaws in their product. When this occurs, they will usually not release an extended warranty repair program until there is a lawsuit. So even though class action lawsuits mostly exist to make lawyers rich while you get a 50-cent check on your fridge, very often they also exist to create these types of repair programs where you can get your device repaired for free after you are an affected user. So this is one example with Apple. These are many different repair programs, and many of these did not come out until there were class action lawsuits filed. These repair programs resulted in people being able to get free repairs instead of having to pay $600 to $1,500 for these repairs, which was what occurred before the class action lawsuit. Something that I've always been confused by on this channel is how many Apple users and Mac rumors and r/Apple people will be very aggravated at the content that I make on Apple, in spite of the fact that the content I make that details the design flaws often form the basis of these class action lawsuits that will result in these extended warranty programs coming out that allow you to pay $0 for repair instead of $600. Often people say that I'm greedily self-promoting my own business, in spite of the fact that when I advocate for these programs, repairs that I could charge $300 for are now being done by Apple for free. Very strange. But I digress. Your ability to have your day in court is very beneficial to you, even if you don't think you're going to use it, and even if you think a lot of the times it doesn't work for you, there's really no good reason for it to be taken away from you. And what I find weird about this entire situation are how people are advocating against their own best interests. One of the questions that I would have for the people that are saying things like this with the rage bait YouTuber and everything else, I'm going to try and level with you here. How does this benefit you? When you say, you're listening to a rage bait YouTuber, nobody's going to actually do this, everything's going to be the same as it was before. I want to understand how you as a user are benefited by a clause being added to the terms of service that says that Nintendo can render your device permanently unusable in whole or in part. How does adding that to the terms of service make your position better? Why would you actively make fun of or deride people that point this out as a bad thing? I can understand if people don't take this as a serious issue. That's fine, I'm not judging you. Even if you're somebody that thinks, well, they're only going to do it to bad people, or meh, even if they do it to me, it's only a $200 console, no big deal. What's confusing to me is how people are arguing in favor of Nintendo rather than in favor of the customer when they are a Nintendo customer rather than a Nintendo shareholder. If we were talking about a device, like a phone, where one company says the reason we glue the battery in is because it makes it thinner and it allows us to have the same liquid resistance with a thinner phone with larger battery. There's an argument back and forth to be made. Some people will say, well, phones used to be liquid resistant anyway and have a good battery. They're going to argue back and forth in design decisions and what benefits the consumer. But there's something to argue about. Here, we're talking about the exact same console, the exact same games. The only difference is a line in a legal document that allows them the right to brick your console. And the terms here are kind of vague. I mean, when it says things like use Nintendo account services in any manner other than to use them in accordance with the applicable documentation and intended use in each case, what does intended use mean? Does that mean that I have pirated and cheated online? Or does that mean that I've installed a theme that you don't like? And would you use a term like that that's intentionally vague to do something to people that you don't particularly like? Here's my argument. When a company does something that has a 0% chance of benefiting the consumer, but a more than 0% chance of screwing the consumer, consumers should band together in saying that's bad, rather than make fun of each other or screw with each other or high-five each other as they're making fun of the people who are discussing the issue. Why is it that the people discussing the issue are the problem rather than the person who created the issue? This will never benefit you. This will never make your life better as a Nintendo customer. The games are not going to have better graphics. The battery life is not going to be longer. The console is not going to cost less money. The only thing that this does is it adds a clause that allows them to screw you. The news is not what Nintendo did. The news is the fact that we are not unified in our reaction to it. The only reason that we live in the world that we live in right now, where companies can remotely disable your access to all of these different items, where your car can spy on you and send your driving information back to General Motors, who sends it to somebody, who sends it to somebody, who sends it to your insurance company, that then hikes your rates because you smash your brakes as a result of the driver in front of you being drunk and doing something stupid. It's because we make fun of each other for quick dopamine hits rather than band together for real change. And what I'm suggesting to all of you is that you try to band together for real change. At some point, this will affect you. That's the thing that I've noticed the most as the independent repair shop owner for the past 15 years. Everybody who comes in here, it's always the same story. I never thought this would affect me. And a lot of people say, yeah, I saw your video and this, that, and the other, but I never thought it would affect me. And I make sure to hammer home when I do certain repairs or certain data recoveries that would not have been possible if I were adhering to Apple's standards and certifications. This is why I got your data back. I bought this chip from a company that Apple says do not sell the chip to independent repair centers to. If I did not have access to this chip that I'm not supposed to have access to, you would not have your data right now. I really try to hammer that home because I want people to understand that when they're making fun of their neighbor for getting screwed, that they're actually making fun of their own future self. Because at some point, this will affect you. And I want people to consider modifications to their attitude a little bit so that they can start doing something about it before it affects them. Let's make the world a better place together, rather than tearing each other apart. That's it for today. And as always, I hope you learned something. I'll see you in the next video. Bye now.
So we have another cancellation today, guys. We love cancellations, don't we? And so anyway, this is what happened today. Basically, so Honda, you guys might know Honda. It's the fat guy from Street Fighter. Apparently really did not like a joke that a person on Team Liquid made, right? So Honda has dropped, this is really funny for me to see this because I've said, you know, I've been saying this was gonna happen many times. I've said over and over and over again, nobody wanted to listen. People said that I was a bad person for suggesting it, but I know this, I know the solution to this problem. I know the solution, but we'll talk about that after we talk about what the problem is. So basically, there is something that is referred to, this is in advertising, and like, I'm just gonna use this term, blue chip brands. These are brands that have a, you know, pristine reputation, they have a clean product, and they don't have any controversies, right? We're not talking about super male vitality. We're not talking about the UFC. We're talking about places like Progressive, places like Ford Motors, Honda, for example. Let me think, Samsung, like just super generic, like the most basic milquetoast, white bread fucking companies that you could possibly have, right? Lay's potato chips, yes, exactly. Apple, right? IBM. And so, yeah, super basic, super corpo brands. Honda has dropped Team Liquid after a controversial tweet about Japan from Liquid Diaz. I don't know who this is. Honda confirmed that a member posted an inappropriate message. They took the matter seriously. They lodged severe protest. The team apologized, implemented measures. After much consideration, AHM has decided to terminate its sponsorship. So Honda proudly partners with organizations whose dreams, standards, and passion match our own. So Honda was partnered with Team Liquid, which meant that, Team Liquid was, getting paid money by Honda. So this guy posted, I know this might sound pretty bad, but he posted a meme of a nuclear bomb. Now, for a little bit of context, Honda is a company that comes from Japan. Now, where did this picture come from? Well, that was a pretty bad time for them, right? They had that was a bad year for Japan, okay? That was a really bad year for Japan. Now, Honda didn't even exist back then, but the guy that made Honda made a company that I think helped the Japanese in World War II, right? And so there's a little bit of hypocrisy here because, and also the nuclear bomb, right? This is oh, wow, it's really bad. But imperialist Japan, these were not necessarily, this wasn't the Teletubbies. Let's just say that, right? And I'm not a historian, but from what I've read, it sure didn't seem too nice. And so anyway, yeah, for the Empire, right? And so not nice guys. Yeah, they're a bit of assholes. And so the nuke made Honda, I ain't gonna say that. That's crazy. And so just like VW and the Germans, exactly. And so anyway, so this guy made a joke about a nuclear bomb, and Honda terminated the entire partnership for the complete team. And I think, gentlemen, I think this needs to start happening more. I think we need accelerationism because this is what the future is. I said more examples of blue chip brands being an unstable form of sponsorship of esports. If esports and programming wants to rely on outside money, they should embrace porn, gambling, and alcohol sponsors. They don't leave after silly controversies or meaningless Twitter noise. This is the future. The future is getting children to gamble with cryptocurrency on their mom's credit card and selling porn. That is the future. That's it. That's right. And if you want esports to survive, now the only way that esports can survive without this is with the FGC, the fighting game community. That is a totally different situation. Now, why is it a totally different situation? It's simple. It's because you're only paying one guy. If Charlie wants to pay some guy to go to a tournament, for Moist Esports, he just does it. It's fucking like 20 grand and that's it. It's done. And so anyway, that's it. New Trump tweet, we're going to get around that. But or anybody else, right? If any of these other people, this is why we even thought about sponsoring people in the FGC because, or I did. I thought about doing my own thing, but I've just, honestly, I've got so many things going on right now. What the fuck do I need another fucking thing for, right? And so anyway, yeah, Bald Esports, right? The FGC is the best community. Well, the reason why the FGC is the best community. So do you want to know the real reason why? One of the big reasons is because most of the big fighting games don't really play a huge role in setting up tournaments. That's a big reason. So it is completely grassroots. It's not like, for example, the Overwatch League. The Overwatch League is top down. It's like Bobby Kotick saying, listen, you're going to have team names and city names for esports teams. It's going to be called the Cincinnati Cleaners, and it's going to be 5 dudes that live in Korea. What? The Massachusetts Mavericks. And it's, wait, 3 guys from Belgium, a German, and a Spanish guy? Wait, what? But I thought it said Massachusetts. What the hell is this? And so anyway, yeah. Yeah, and I could go on, right? But I think my point is made, right? I think it's made. And so anyway, it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. And so the reason why the FGC is different is that the FGC is not built on a throne of lies. esports and the entire economy around esports is built around thank you for the 25 gifted subs. Gentlemen, I've seen a lot of people gifting subs today. I really appreciate it. But keep in mind, I'm completely financially stable. And if you want to spend your money on anything else, go ahead and do it. I appreciate the money, but never feel like you have to support the stream. Just being here is more than enough for me, okay? So keep that in mind. Yeah, I always appreciate it, but that's it. And so just keep that in mind. Yeah, as people, I'm totally fine. Don't worry about me. And so I always take Twitch Primes, but that's because Jeff Bezos, of anybody who doesn't need the money, there's 1 or 2 people in the world that need the money less than I do. He's one of them, okay? And so I can take a Twitch Prime, but that's it. Anyway, my point is, besides that, let me go back. What was I even thinking besides this? I got distracted. So the FGC, so esports is built up by venture capitalism. Now, I tried to talk to some of these people. I did. And now, finally, because in 2014, a lot of the guys my age, we were like 23, 24. Who the fuck cares what we think? Well, now we're in our 30s. And so now a lot of the guys that I talk to that work at these different VC firms, they understand that esports is a money pit. They understand the longitudinal reality of this. But you had the fucking boomers and these Gen X people that were making decisions for venture capitalists and money, investing like $50 million into something, thinking that they're going to turn it into the NBA. Well, it turns out it's not. And also, this is another really big component. I didn't even think of this until I brought it up. Harry Balls, thanks a lot for the 5 gifted subs. I appreciate that. So another really big component is that America has such an endemic sports culture by itself that there's no reason for them to add in anything else besides that. NBA of losing money? Yeah, but they make a lot more money than fucking, like some Overwatch League does, right? Let's be honest, right? And so anyway, and so what I'm trying to get at is that basically the entire value of esports and the economy of esports has been artificially inflated higher than the fucking 2007 housing bubble or the .com bubble. Like and it's popping, and it's getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And this is also contextualized inside of Western audiences, because Chinese audiences, Korean audiences, they're on board with this. You're a professional player for CSGO, you go to Brazil, you're a fucking celebrity. You're a professional player for CSGO, you go to Chicago, you get robbed. That's just the way it is. And so the fact is, nobody gives a fuck about this over here in America, and they don't care about it that much over in Europe either. And so the fact is that, like, a lot of this stuff, the real gang shit, no, I'm being honest, right? Am I wrong? And so anyway, esports is it's built on a throne of lies. It's built on a throne of lies, misplaced optimism, fucking, in my opinion, ignorance, and, basically greed. And so now the throne that was built in 2010 is now finally starting to crumble. Now, how do you replace that throne? You replace it with porn, cryptocurrency, and gambling, because those are the only sponsors. Because the fact is that if you have to sanitize your event enough to where big brands want to sponsor it, you have an event that's not fun to watch. Nobody wants to watch an event where everybody says, oh, good game. They want to watch an event like Idra back in the 2010 StarCraft 2 days, where he's talking shit in game, he's quitting out of games in mid-match, in the middle of the fucking stage. We want to see fights on stream. We want to see Hungrybox throwing a chair into the crowd. What was it? Somebody threw a lobster at Hungrybox and then he started screaming about it. That's the real content, okay? That's real esports. That's what people care about. And by the way, if you think I'm wrong, then explain to UFC. The best fucking fight ever was whenever fucking Khabib beat the fuck out of Conor McGregor. As soon as he beats the fuck out of Conor McGregor, he immediately goes, all right, another one, climbs over the fucking octagon and starts trying to beat up his team. Immediately, just instantaneously. And Joe Rogan was there. Oh, well, this is such a bad... Shut up, Joe. You know this was a good day. This was such a good day. Everybody knows this was a good day. What a great day. What a great day for what a great day for UFC. Yeah, it was majestic. It was amazing. And so anyway, and Conor McGregor, he's a huge asshole. Khabib is like, I like Khabib more than Conor McGregor. I like Conor McGregor. He's all right. Well, after the rape stuff, maybe I can't say I like Conor McGregor anymore. But like, you know, back then I thought he was an all right guy. But anyway, I like Khabib more. I'll tell you that. And so this happens, and it was like, it's the perfect fucking story, right? And so anyway, Conor got humbled. He did, and that's what he deserved. And the point is, though, is that people, that's what guys, and also, who watches UFC? You want to know who watches UFC? I do, you do. And by you, I mean everybody in the chat, because it's all men between the ages of 18 and 40. Actually, 18 and 60 with the UFC. Those are the people that watch UFC, okay? Girls aren't watching this shit. Girls are not tuning in to watching the Counter-Strike finals. Girls, if they use a voice chat in CSGO, they get, both teams are like, hold up, guys, wait a minute. I think we have an imposter. And they kick her out of the game. So, no, girls don't watch this shit. It's all guys. It's all guys. You go to the FGC, you watch one of these Smash tournaments, it's a bunch of sweaty dudes. And so anyway, you try to make this content and you try to make this appeal to this, you know, fucking broad audience. It doesn't exist. It doesn't fucking exist, bro. Like, it's not there. And so, yeah, I know a girl watches UFC too, just to see a dude's muscles. Yeah, sure. I mean, right? I mean, that's... There are people that watch, you know, like women's basketball, but because they think that the women are attractive. It's like, oh, wow, I wonder why women's pole vaulting is so popular on YouTube. It must be for the athleticism, right? That must be it. Yeah, the women's long jump, exactly. And so anyway, beach volleyball, well, I was just using basketball as a more abstract example, but sure. But anyway, here's the point, right? Is that Honda wants to have a sanitized brand that, you know, is just completely flaccid, boring, and is simply a vehicle for marketing. That's all they want. The fact is that making a joke about a nuclear bomb and losing the sponsorship for the entire fucking, the entire brand. And he's going, I want to sincerely apologize. I made a big mistake using the GIF. Shut up, you pussy. Nobody cares about this. It doesn't matter. Like, nobody thinks it's a mistake. You don't think it's a mistake. Nobody at fucking Liquid thinks it's a mistake. Let's just call this out for what it is. It's Honda being fucking retarded. It's some retard over at Honda that got offended by this, and they canceled the partnership. No, I'm not going to... What are you pretending for? Like, and also, by the way, you, like, Team Liquid sponsors a WoW guild. Do you really think that none of those WoW players have ever said or done anything that bad? What do you think the odds of that are? What do you think the odds? Maybe there might just be a little bit of a possibility, right? What's all this crying about? It's crying about a nuclear bomb gift, right? Honda was waiting to quit and looking for an opportunity? Yeah, I think so. And so anyway, nuke means Japan nukes your career. Yeah, I guess so, right? And so anyway, nobody, you don't care about this. You know you don't care about this. Everybody knows you don't care about this. I think the world is tired of these corpo fake bullshit apologies from people that it's obvious you don't give a fuck. You don't care. Like, nobody cares about this. Like, just stop pretending. It's bad for... And also, here's the other thing, too. It's bad for your brand. It's bad for you as a content creator to be out here faking it as if you think tweeting a GIF about a nuclear bomb is a big mistake. No, it's not. No, it's not, you retard. You know that. Everybody knows that. It's ridiculous. And so anyway, yeah, they lost a huge sponsorship, though. Yeah, and they should have never had it. That's what I'm saying. You should have never tried to court these brands. Should have never tried to do it. I think the future of esports, porn, gambling, and alcohol. and cryptocurrency. That is the future of esports. If you want to make a esports brand, you have to do these things. And if you don't, I want to see your balance sheets, because if you tell me you're not operating at a loss, I'm going to say you're lying. That's it. So everything you despised 3 years ago, I still don't want... I never despised porn. But that being said, I don't gamble, I don't drink alcohol, and I don't really invest in cryptocurrency. So this isn't something that I do, but I like, so here's an example. I think that we should probably look for other forms of, power besides oil, right? But I own a car that uses oil and it uses gasoline, I mean. And the reason why is because that's just the way it is. That's the way it is. Now, you can say that, you should have principles about this. But yeah, you can have principles, or you could have a company. You could have either one, so you can decide. But if these people want to have a company, they can't afford principles. That's all there is to it. So yeah, but would you say porn is bad for society overall? I don't care about this. I don't care about this conversation. It's so abstract, and there's like 50 other things I want to talk about today. I don't even want to get into it. But anyway, so these companies need to realize that if you want to exist in the online space, you have to find companies that understand the online space. If they do not understand the online space, you will not have a good partnership, because they are entering into it without full understanding, and you are entering into it without full understanding. That is the problem. That is what it is. And so anyway, talk to Dana White. Maybe I will talk to Dana White. We'll see what happens. But Chrono Odyssey next month. I saw it. I'm going to look at it. It's on the list. You don't have to remind me. And so Riot has become a partner with Coinbase recently. Is that true? Let me see. Riot, Coinbase. May 6th. Coinbase partners with Riot Games across Global League and I'm telling you, bro, like, the guys over at Riot, they're smart. I talked to them. I went to Riot before. Let me think. I'm trying to think, because, like, I signed an NDA, right? I did not play the MMO. I did not. I did not play the MMO. I did not even see an image of the MMO. Let me say this. I was as honest as possible with them. And basically, they were like, yeah, thanks. Yep. Straight up. To some of the highest people in the company. Yes, straight up. And that was it. Literally no problems. These guys are smart. They know what's going on. Yeah. And thank you for coming. Yes, everything is good. They heard you. Yes. And that's it. They were high, all right. And missing the point. And so anyway, that's the right amount. I absolutely did not. But the point is that they know where the future is, right? That's it. You still haven't watched Arcane, have you? I watched a little bit more of it, okay? To be fair, I did. And so, yeah, I'm watching a YouTube video where you got a Fansly ad on Twitch, right? No, that was when Cutie Cinderella used Fansly as an advertiser for the streamer games, for the streamer awards, and then people complained about it afterwards. And, I'm a big supporter of that kind of stuff, right? I think that, adult content and things like this, I don't like the idea that the internet needs to be sanitized for children. I think that I think parents need to exercise proper discretion, and instead of all adults kind of collaborating together to sanitize and protect children from the internet, I think that there needs to be rules that keep children off the internet, and there also need to be parents that prepare children for the real world, which is in fact many times the internet. And so that's it. I don't care, like, oh, wow, there could be a kid watching this. I don't give a fuck. I don't care. You think this is the first time? Bro, this kid's probably watched an ISIS execution, and you're worried that he's seeing an ad for Fansly? I don't give a fuck, and neither do you. You're just complaining to complain. You don't care. You know you don't care. I know you don't care. Nobody cares. It's all a fucking joke. And so anyway, true and real, yes, I'm being honest. The internet should be 18 plus. The internet should be 18 plus. That's a fact, except for places that are curated explicitly for children, like YouTube Kids, for example. And so anyway, Team Liquid, I think, and a lot of these esports organizations, I think this is only going to get worse. And I have an offer for Honda, okay? It's a nuclear offer. I'll only offer it twice. If you guys need help with any form of figuring out how to build your online brand or understanding any degree of the internet and where to invest your money, I will give you insight. Just hit me up. Just DM me. You know, like, you know where to find me, right? I mean, like, it's easy. And so just text me and just let me know. And I will do it for a fraction of the amount of money that you could figure out a consulting fee to do this for. And I will outperform any fucking agency that there is. And if I don't pay me. So if you guys want to have an idea how this works, I'll let you know. If you don't, keep doing what you're doing. It's working great, right, guys? 72% loss in money. Haha. Wow, good job. Keep it up. Yeah, keep it up. And so anyway, and will my mattress be free? Yeah, I don't know. And so that's it. And yeah, and this goes for any company, right? If they want help with, you know, figuring out a marketing plan or anything like that, a lot of these companies, and the reason why I do this is that I view it as planting flowers to eventually one day have a garden, is that, and not for me, but for everybody, the fact is that a lot of these marketing companies, so do you remember whenever I was criticizing, where was it? Oh, fuck, where was the thing? No, this isn't it. I've had a lot of these. This is the Twitch to OnlyFans. Yeah, a lot of these, I don't remember a lot. Yeah, okay, so, oh, this was a good day. Remember this? This was what a good day for me this was. And anyway, did I save this photo? I'm going to save this. Winning. Okay. Yeah, we're going to save this right here. I don't want to miss that. And anyway, so what was I thinking about besides that?
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Massive news for the LEC. Great news, in fact. Sources. Natus Vincere set to replace Rogue in the LEC starting with the summer split. Which is kind of crazy to do this in between splits. Apparently, there is nothing known, according to this article. No concrete information concerning the future of Rogue's players or its coaching staff. Obviously, due to German labor laws, you are very well protected as a player and a coach because you're an employee if you are in the LEC, of course. And Navi buying the slot of Rogue, I think obviously they're going to inherit the contracts. Seeing as Rogue do this deal here in the middle of the split, I don't think they're negotiating from a point of power because they've been signaling that they want out of the league as soon as possible. They just want to cash out, peace out, because obviously they are bleeding money dry, and I wouldn't be surprised if the value of the slot is also going down considering the climate of esports. So I imagine that Natus Vincere actually got this quite cheap if we compare it to the price that KC got it under. KC, of course, bought their slot, 66% of the slot, and an evaluation of £23 million. Okay? So in terms of that price point, and when Casey got in, I do think and imagine that the LEC spot should be cheaper now, especially knowing that Rogue tried to sell to Falcons, they tried to sell to Nigma Galaxy, and of course, they created the roster insanely last minute because they were in big trouble. They tried to sell, and Riot declined Falcons and so forth, because in the end, Riot wants partners that contribute a little bit more than just money to the league. And I don't know if they are ready to make the plunge to join with Saudi money within the LEC. We have EWC. Maybe it takes a couple of years until Saudi money takes over completely. But nevertheless, I have it on good authority that Navi already, as an org, for those who don't know, this is an org, there's a lot of history in esports. They've been around for a very, very long time. Them coming into the league is a very good thing because obviously they have pride and honor, something that Rogue clearly lacked after winning that split in 2022. I know that they have some offices already in Berlin. They're going to be running with some of their own people, but we don't know what the roster is going to be looking like, right? In terms of their potential, what they can do in such a time span between spring and summer, the availability of players is definitely tough. And the question is if they want to spend money now to have an impact, or if they're going to just wait for an off season and make it big then. I do think from a strategic point of view, it does make sense for Navi to kind of stabilize and to figure out, their base and their office and their setup and everything that they need to succeed, and then make, some big moves in terms of the off-season market when there is more possibilities, of course, available. I think that in terms of building the roster, I wouldn't be surprised if they retain the majority of the players that are currently playing, because if you remember, when Rogue signed these players, I think a lot of these players are, of course, on just mercenary contracts, and that's cool. In terms of Rogue, I don't think that they've necessarily only done negative things. When they came into the league, they took over for Rocket. They retained the majority of those players from Rocket. They, of course, introduced, through their academy system, they introduced Inspired, Larson, which, of course, have had a pretty decent impact. They brought in, of course, Hansama from Misfits. They built a very formidable roster. This roster made playoffs for the first time in summer, together with Vander. Coming into 2020, they made some changes. They brought in Trimby, another player that came from Academy, and Odoamne took the place of Finn after they made a Worlds bid, back in 2020. 2020 was also a year where, this roster was insanely competitive against, of course, the strongest European team of all time, taking G2 to 5 games, where, Larson actually played things like Akali. 2021 also, they didn't make, a massive splash, but still, they were very competitive in the league, and we saw a lot of good sides to this organization. It was very, very competitive, and I remember competing against Rogue, that this is a team that, you look out to beat. This is a team that was definitely competitive and a part of the top teams in Europe, due to the likes of the performances of Hansama, an Inspired, a Larson, and of course, Odoamne. In the end, Hansama left, of course, to Team Liquid in 2022. Inspired left to EG, where he won, of course, North America. 2022, everyone thought that, they just lost some of their strongest players, if not their strongest players. And they, of course, brought in Comp and additionally Malrang, who was the substitute jungle for Canyon coming out of Damwon at the time. We saw some games from Malrang in Damwon because there was a situation where basically they needed to use a sub, an emergency sub, and Shomik was playing AD, Canyon mid, and Malrang was jungling, and that's how they put together their roster. And this, of course, was the peak of Rogue, where they won the summer split. That's always one that pains me super much, because I thought that one was super, super winnable. But in the end, Rogue did it with, definitely like rebuilding in a year where everyone expected this team to be a lot worse after losing some of their key players. I think deserves praise, but this is where Rogue entered into a partnership with Koi, and I don't know the exact details, but the relationship between Koi and Rogue, of course, soured in the end. Ibai, in the end, left, and there was, talk about how he needed to spend so much money out of pocket, and he was misled by Rogue and so forth, and it seemed like the people on the Rogue side wanted to make some kind of an exit from esports, and there was some philosophical, let's say, disagreements between Koi and Rogue. So that was, of course, a tumultuous year, 2023. After moving from Odoamne to Shigenda, this is where the suffering started. They didn't really do a good job here, They even went so far to trade Trimby. You guys remember that trade? That trade, the Trimby Advian trade, which was absolutely nuts. Trimby was not happy on Rogue because his team was heavily underperforming, and Trimby went to Fnatic, and they did a pretty damn good job, because Fnatic at the time, if you guys remember 2023, Fnatic was in complete shambles. They had the Reckless and the Rux roster, and then they replaced Rux with Advien, and nothing changed. And we had the whole Nexus situation where Reckless could have hit the Nexus, and then they didn't, and lost to Mad Lions, and didn't go further into playoffs. And then somehow Rogue ended up in a position where they traded Trimby for Advien. And on paper, that's a horrible trade. But maybe they were just being nice to Trimby, because Trimby got freed from a very, very underperforming team. 2024 was no different. Watching Rogue was just a torture ritual, and I think everyone watching them in the world saw this as a hallmark for the failure of franchising, a team that simply didn't care enough and didn't give enough back to the league, and definitely were a bottom feeder. In a non-franchise system, this is a team that, of course, would be eliminated and replaced. And between 2024 and 2025, they tried very, very hard to, of course, sell the spot. And as I mentioned before, some of the bids were declined, and there were active rumblings about Na'Vi. And, in the end, it happened. But I do think that Rogue, as many other teams in esports, they tried to figure it out. They tried to do it their own way. They couldn't do it. Esports is inherently super, super difficult. And I don't want to just stand here and dunk on Rogue, because I do think that they brought us some very, very cool players in Inspired. They made Hansama shine on the team. Trimby, of course. Larson as well. Some very, very strong players. And they won the LEC once. They had some solid Worlds performances. 2022, they did manage to make it into the quarterfinals. They got stomped there, but they did manage to make it, which is cool and all. But now they're gone. I think the timing is a little bit spooky, but I hope Nasus Vincere take the time to plan things out and do things right in summer, and set out to make an ambitious, play to be a big player in the league. I think the key thing here is that Na'Vi carry, so much esports pedigree that it would be very, very shameful if they wouldn't be competitive or have, like they don't present a very, very sound idea in terms of what they want to be within the league. If Na'Vi is in the same position as Rogue were in terms of the standings being at the bottom, that's not something that Na'Vi would ever accept. I have a fun anecdote that I can end on. Is back in Season 3, when I was playing and preparing for the LCS EU qualifier together with Team Solo Mebdi, the number one org I was in contact with to join as we would qualify into the LCS EU was actually Na'Vi. We were supposed to join together in forces if we qualified, but obviously Team Solo Mebdi was a team where 3 players got permabanned, not me. 3 players got permabanned, so that meant that we got disqualified from the event. This is the infamous Jensen, Darkwing Jack's story. But Na'Vi was the team that we were supposed to join together with. I was talking with the owner, and we were very, very excited. We needed a team to pay for our trip to IEM Brazil right after the LEC qualifier. That was very important to us. But in the end, with the ban, it seemed like Na'Vi kind of probably decide we dodged a bullet there. Let's not join League of Legends esports until 12 years later. So there it is. Obviously, Na'Vi were in League of Legends for a little bit. There was a point in time where they played, I believe, even OGN. They had players like Aranea. They had Cotenex, Nesrilas. I remember Citizen Wayne was a very, very strong player. And if I remember correctly, they did, in fact, play in OGN. Let me see if they did. So we have Champion Summer. They lost to, I don't even remember this logo. Startail Bombers. Damn, Startail. They was played against Startail, and then Zenix Storm, and then CJ Entus, which is crazy that the one team that they beat was CJ Entus. But it is what it is. Na'Vi is back in League of Legends esports, and I'm personally excited. I think it's a very, very good thing. I think it's very positive. There he is, Zero Gravity. This is the man that I communicated with at the time. And wait, the manager of the team was my former manager that went to Splice? I had no idea. That's crazy. The world is very small. I love this guy. He's super, super cool. This is Hans. He was our team manager at Splice. Nevertheless, I think that's a good point to end the video. Esports world is small. I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.
Not the way I wanted to start the week, but I guess it's kind of like the way we have to start the week. I'm sure you guys have seen the videos going around already. I know this might seem like bandwagoning and just jumping on like their conversation, but really their videos opened up my eyes to this being a bigger problem that I thought was just us, to be honest. So we're gonna talk about it today. I'm gonna give you some history about what the last like 12 years has been like working with, almost at Intel. NVIDIA, actually Intel's been so quiet lately. Intel seems like a nice change of pace actually right about now. So this video is brought to you by the new GPU Apocalypse 2.0 shirt, which is kind of perfect for today's video. If you hate AI and you hate fake frames and you hate overpriced shit and you just hate NVIDIA, then this t-shirt's actually for you. So it's updated with new graphics and new Apocalypse because let's face it, the old one actually never went anywhere. Okay, so if you guys have not watched the Steves, specifically regarding the 5060, this has been one of the most non-transparent, manipulative, just downright dirty practice when it comes to reviewing the 5060. Now, we already did our video talking about the fact that reviewers who had access to a 5060 would not have even gotten a driver that works until day of launch, which is technically today. This is the same day upload that you guys are seeing this. I was actually working on something else that I want to do that's a lot more fun, that we had to sort of pause and kind of give our 2 cents, no pun intended, actually every pun intended, regarding this whole situation. So just high-level discussion here. Even Gamers Nexus has experienced direct attempt at manipulation and almost extortion in a way of how they have to do their content if they want to be a part of NVIDIA's media circuit, if you will. At this point, can we just change that term to media circus? Okay, moving on. Hardware Unboxed also expressed the same sort of concerns about the way that 5060 review is being handled. Now, on the surface, it looked to a lot of us like the performance is going to be garbage, the price to performance is just going to be terrible, the generational uplift is going to be pretty much non-existent, and it's not going to really cost $299, it's going to cost way more than that, and if you're not going to test it with multi-frame gen on, and only test it against cards that we tell you you're allowed to test against, we being NVIDIA, then you're not a part of this release cycle. Now, we didn't hear any of that because we weren't even approached about reviewing a 5060, and that's fine, because I think I made it very clear in the 5060 Ti video as well, moving on, like I don't even really want to review a 5060, we know it's going to be a hot mess. However, I have a duty to the audience, which is to provide as much independent information as I possibly can for you guys to make informed decisions when it comes to buying. So had they reached out to us, I would have been all ears to review a card, but I absolutely would have turned down any of those requirements to review the card because realistically, up until right now, there's never been quote unquote requirements to review a card. This is what happens when a giant starts to feel like they're losing control. They try to rein in as tight as they possibly can the messaging and then only align themselves with people that are going to drink the same corporate Kool-Aid and share the same message. I want to split off there for a second and say any review that you see right now regarding the 5060, Steve makes a very good point with this too, that you have to question its validity. Now, I'm not questioning the reviewer. I think many of these reviewers, especially smaller reviewers that might just now be getting into the size where brands reach out to them, specifically like NVIDIA or any of the partners, NVIDIA partners, basically might feel like forced to have to play by their rules to be a part of the game. The problem is this shouldn't be a game. This should be a brand that is confident enough in their product to just send it out and let the product speak for itself. Now, I can understand the frustration of a brand that has put a lot of money, energy, and effort into new technology, like, for instance, DLSS 4, which DLSS 4 by itself has actually been very widely praised and well received at how much performance increase there is at very, very minimal and very difficult to spot fidelity loss. It's a complete flip to the script from what we saw on the 20 series launch when DLSS first came out, where it looked like you were looking at it through cataracts. But anyway, I digress. What we're seeing now is if you don't mention our multi-frame gen, if you don't test against cards that don't even have multi-frame gen, so let me back up. Some of the claims, and I haven't personally experienced these claims because, like I said, we weren't even approached for 5060 review, and I'm fine with that, to be honest. But those that apparently, and this is alleged, I was not a part of this conversation, but multiple people are reporting the same thing, and I can see NVIDIA doing this because they've tried to do similar things with us in the past, specifically regarding DLSS and ray tracing, is that if you don't agree to only test it against a 2060 and a 3060, notice the omission of 4060 because 4060 does have frame gen, just not multi-frame gen, and you cannot review it against any competitor, i.e. Intel and AMD, because guess what? The Intel Battlemage is now in the price point of 5060, although it's kind of non-existent on the shelves. It's actually, I take that back, was it the B770 or B570 is on shelves. I actually saw that at Micro Center. B580 is not, but B570 is on the shelves and it's still very relevant versus this card. Probably something we should be testing when we go buy one. Anyway, moving on. This is stacking the deck. This is forcing a review to be conclusionary with the results you expect to be shown. This is not fair competition. This is not where you are so proud of your product and you believe in your product, you're like, you know what? Put it against whoever you want. Put it against whoever you want, however you want. We're confident that our product is going to shine. That is not what NVIDIA is doing right now. NVIDIA is acting like they're scared, to be honest. But this isn't the first time we've seen this. I want to give a little history of my experiences with NVIDIA, which started off fairly positive. And then right around COVID time, 2020, for a lot of people too, it turned real sour real quick. So my first dealings with NVIDIA, very high level, go all the way back to the 900 series launch. I remember specifically it was the 980. I remember sitting in their office and them doing a VR demo, because VR was actually a big push then. Remember, we didn't have DLSS yet. We didn't have tensor cores. We didn't have RT. We didn't have any of that. Like VR performance, everyone wanted VR. Can we get 90 frames per second per eye? That's what the push was. But when the Titan first came out, but when the Titan Maxwell came out, they flew from New York to Los Angeles to have a meeting with me, basically at the airport, like steakhouse, and then flew right back to New York because I was a smaller, much smaller channel at the time. And they flew out to have a meeting with me because I couldn't make it to their event, and then they went back. And I showed them my satirical videos of me ranting and raving and pretending to be Arnold Schwarzenegger and breaking things about how mad I was about the 780 Ti came out after I'd just gotten a 780, and then the Titan comes out at $1,000, which today is comical, considering you'll spend $1,000 for a 70 tier card, not a Titan level card, so let that sink in. Anyway, Tom A. Peterson at the time was kind of like the senior global technical marketer guy, like he is an engineer. And then Brian Del Rizzo was the direct contact we typically had when it came to NVIDIA, when it came to global marketing and hardware. And then Brian Burke was the guy that was specifically involved with like the games technology with with GeForce and reviewers and the game technologies. So it was a good meeting. Tom was like, I showed them my satirical videos. Tom loved it. Brian was concerned that upper management would get mad if I took on a satirical approach. You guys, if you remember that Titan video, it's the one where I was eating packing peanuts and then I got really mad at myself for actually liking the card because I legit did like the card. Everything was great. In fact, Tom's quote, even back then when Brian was like, are we sure we should allow this? First of all, that should be the first concern. And it did pop into my head like, wait a minute. They're going to tell me what I can and cannot do in my own videos? So that was the first red flag, going all the way back to like 2014, okay? But I digress. Again, Tom, and this is why I love the man to death, and I really hope I get to work closely with him again over at Intel's the ARC series, the ARC stuff. He said, who are we to tell him how to make his content? That's the way it should be, and that's the way it should have been. And I think that's the last time I ever heard that from NVIDIA. Moving on, I've never been directly monetarily supported by NVIDIA, ever. Even when you guys saw the GeForce Garage thing, when we worked on Skunkworks together, the Terry Crews project, the Post Malone project, any of the reviews or builds that featured NVIDIA product were never monetarily supported by NVIDIA. Every now and then we might have got a Founders Edition card or something from them, but I always worked directly with their board partners and such, and none of that stuff was even like paid for. Like they never received money, or MDF funds, or stands for Marketing Development Funds, which means NVIDIA would pay the brand money to work with us. But NVIDIA still controls the message when that happens. So we're very against MDFs as much as we possibly can be, because then we don't know who we're actually working for. Like, is the message being controlled by NVIDIA, or is it being controlled by the partner? So we are very much like MDFs are, for the most part, a no-go for us. It really depends. Like we've done AMD MDFs. I think we've done a handful of Intel MDFs over the years, but with very red-lined contracts that remove any messaging that has to be said, right? Like I mentioned, back in around 2020 is when Hardware Unboxed basically got the shun and the strong arm of, you're not reviewing product the way we feel you should be reviewing it, therefore you will not be receiving product from us anymore. Let me pause there for a second. Here's the other problem with the culture at NVIDIA. NVIDIA gets to control who their partners send cards to. Let me repeat that. NVIDIA gets to control who their partners can send cards to. When you're leading up into a review cycle and you have a new product coming, board partners have to supply a list to NVIDIA of who they're sending cards to. Why? Because if NVIDIA has a problem with it, they can say no. That is a huge problem when it comes to the way that reviews are performed as far as I'm concerned. Now let's be transparent here. AMD and Intel do that too. Whether it's CPU or GPU, anyone that's involved in a review of a mother product, in this point like a CPU, right, involves a motherboard brand. The motherboard brands have to also say, for review purposes, who they're sending boards to, so Intel knows who's going to also be reviewing their product. Now, I've never had AMD on either the Radeon side or the CPU side, or Intel on either ARC or CPU, desktop CPUs tell us, or tell brands, no, you can't work with them. We've had them have concerns over some of our accuracies and stuff in the past, which we've addressed and I've been very transparent of, and I think most of you have actually, I've gotten huge feedback saying we've really stepped up our game in terms of accuracy and the type of data we're presenting, and the brands all the way up to Intel and like AMD. NVIDIA not so much, but they've even commented like, hey, we love what you're doing, keep it up, we like to see the growth, we like to see that even after all these years, you can teach an old dog new tricks, and yes, that's a gray hair joke. But moving forward, NVIDIA is very, very shallow in the sense that if a brand wants to send product to a reviewer they don't like, they can say no, and the partner will abide by that, because NVIDIA will start to hold the brand accountable if the reviewer says something they don't like that they've blacklisted. So they'll start to hold the AIB accountable. Now what can they do? Well, they can start to withhold allocation. They can start to screw around with the availability and the pricing. And they've done this. In fact, they've done it to EVGA, which is one of the reasons why EVGA said, fuck you, we're done being your patsy in all of this. And EVGA was probably one of the biggest red flags on if it's that bad to work with them as one of your largest SIs, and one of the only SIs that only did NVIDIA. Almost every other SI, not SI, I keep saying SI, AIB, any board partner, almost every other board partner works with both brands. ROG, it has Radeon and GeForce. Gigabyte, Radeon and GeForce. So the MSI, Radeon and GeForce. The big players do both. That is why, and we'll go back to 2020 in a second, but around that time frame is also when NVIDIA tried to start the GPP, or the GeForce Partner Program. That was not a reviewer thing, that was a board partner thing, where if you had to play by their rules to be a part of GPP, and those that were part of GPP got the better allocations, they got more allocation, they got earlier allocation. In fact, there were brands that came forward saying, hey, we're not a part of the GPP and our boards are delayed. We don't even have anything available at launch because of the fact that their allocations were withheld, specifically to try and affect their business to the point to where they had no choice but to join the GPP, which also said you could not be brand agnostic. You could not do Radeon graphics at the same time as GeForce if you're a member of the GPP. It really starts to sound like a political party at this point. It really is the GeForce political party is what the GPP is. So moving on, that program did eventually get squashed. A lot of reviewers like myself talked and got very vocal about the anti-consumer aspect of what the GPP really was. That program, fortunately, never really saw the light of day. It only happened for a little while, right around the 20 series launch. Going back to the 20 series launch, that's when Hardware Unboxed experienced their first real strong arm effect of saying, you're not reviewing things the way we want, therefore we are going to blacklist you. Now the irony in all of that is they didn't try that with us, and we explicitly didn't test ray tracing or DLSS or any of that. We specifically stuck to raw horsepower rasterization tests because there weren't enough titles to really talk about. There was a handful of titles. Hardware Unboxed did full dedicated content to those technologies and still got fucked when it came to all of that. And it wasn't until most of the media stood up in solidarity with Hardware Unboxed to say, you do that to them, you're doing that to all of us. And it sets a precedent. And that's not okay. It's not okay to try and influence independent reviewers. There's a reason why it's called independent. So anyway, that was when we saw the turnover, if you will, of the global marketing team that was running things at that time. Now, I don't believe still to this day that the Brian Burke and the Brian Del Rizzo and the Tom A. Peterson were the ones making those decisions. I think as time went on, it became a bit more obvious that it was stemming from C-suite leadership all the way up to Jensen himself, at the way that it was expected that the reviewers were to behave. And unfortunately, it got put on that marketing team who was working directly with the reviewers to have to communicate those messages, and then they became the fall guys. They became the fall guys. So Brian ended up retiring and moving on. Tom A. Peterson went over to Intel, as you guys know. I have no idea what Brian Burke is doing. Brandon Bell, who is also one of the, he's got the famous quote of telling me, don't worry about 12-volt high power, it just works. Anyway, we all know how that turned out, and it's still turning out. It's quite the circus, if you will. But anyway, moving on, we have a whole
Video games are great. We all like them. We all want to play them. And, importantly, I'm trying to sit as still as I possibly can so the DVD logo doesn't go around anywhere. More importantly, we all want to be able to keep playing them even after companies have stopped support for the game. Now, one of the Tony Hawk's games is a great example of this. I'll see if I can explain this a bit later on. But who in the chat has heard of videographic games? Video games for short. Vid games to us game heads. That's what we call ourselves as gamer fans. Now, call me old-fashioned, but when you buy a video game, I like to be able to put the game into my games console and or PC, and the game plays. I know, it's an archaic, insane thought, but I've still got a Sega Master System, one of the original Sega Master Systems, on the top of the IKEA Kallax unit over there. You stick a cartridge in, it plays the game. Oh yeah, classic stuff. I've still got a PlayStation 1. You put a disc in, it plays the game. If you haven't watched the Kadikarus PlayStation 1 cheat video by now, you should go and watch the Kadikarus PlayStation 1 cheat video. It's fantastic. However, imagine that a video game company required you to connect to an online server to play a single-player game. Just imagine. It's insane, I know, but The Sims did it. And then imagine that in the future, that server hosted by that company goes down. Your single-player game is now unplayable. Even if you have the data on the disk. Even if you put the disc into a PC or a games console, you can now no longer play that game. The question is, why? Now, a good example of this is one of the Tony Hawk's games, and you'll have to correct me on the exact one that it was. It was like Tony Hawk's Underground 2, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 4 or 5 or something like that. It was one of the Tony Hawk's games specifically. The physical disc that was printed for that Tony Hawk's game only actually contained, I believe it was the first level of the game within data on the disc. And what the disc then did was allow you to download the rest of the game from the online server. And this was done because the DVD logo is really distracting. This was done because the company wasn't able to print all of the data onto the discs at the right time. You'll have to work out exactly which Tony Hawk's game it is, but they printed the first level on, and then they gave you the authority to download Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 5, thank you. They gave you the ability to download the rest of the data from the server the disk would connect you to. However, a couple of years later, that server went down. That server is no longer maintained. The data is no longer accessible. So if you purchase that CD, you get the first level of the game, and then nothing else. Because you physically can't get it. The data's not there. The game is now effectively killed. Now, it doesn't matter whether it's a good or a bad game. The point is, you no longer have access to it. Even though you purchased the CD, which effectively is just a right to download the data to play the game, $50 for one level, it's dumb. Now, what Ross would like to propose with his Stop Killing Games initiative is, once companies... Ubisoft here, I will bury you in the microtransaction. Yeah, they will. They absolutely will. What Ross would like to propose is, once a video game is no longer supported by the company that makes it and is no longer actively generating revenue for the company that owns the rights to it, Ross does not want the rights to it. He doesn't want the copyright to be able to, sell versions of the game. All he would like is for the game to still be accessible to people who want to play it. That's pretty much it. The game becomes freeware, if you will. It's not taking away ownership from the original company. It's not taking away copyright. It's not taking away trademark. It's simply saying, hey guys, we're not actively making money from this video game anymore, and yet we've made it as a piece of art. Therefore, we want you to be able to experience the art, so here's the stuff you need to do that. Now, the problem with that is, are you passing on copyright when you do that? Effectively, a library of video games. That's what it would be. Because you go to a library and you have access to all the books in the world that you need access to. You take the book away, you enjoy it, you give it back. You don't own it. You just have access to it. Imagine if a company was printing books, and when they stopped selling that book, because they could no longer make money off it, they went around and found every copy of the book that exists and takes them back. Because you're not allowed to have them. They're not making money off them anymore. They take them away. That's pretty much what it is. In this example, who is paying to host the server and will allow downloads after making no profit? That is a very good question. And the answer is potentially a video game focused charity. Or you allow people to have access to the software to host that themselves. Effectively an archive.org thing for video games. Stop Killing Games has a UK petition. Did you sign it? I absolutely did. I am 100% behind it. Now, here's the problem. This is why it's not super simple. Lawyers get involved, and lawyers say something such as, Well, we can't give the source code to the video game away. It might contain industry secrets. We can't give the source code. The DVD logo is killing your attention span. Well, that can go over there then in the top right corner. The lawyers got involved, and you can't just give people access to the source code because they then might kind of decompile it. They might use ways to take information from it. There's going to be industry secrets within there. So how do we do that? How do we give access to video games without getting on the wrong side of the law? And that's what it is. Here's an example of a game that I specifically bought because of this. I believe it's Warcraft 3. Now, I have no real love. I have no real love for Blizzard one way or the other, but I quite enjoy the video game Warcraft 3. I paid £2 from the English second-hand shop CEX. Does anyone remember the Warcraft 3 debacle when they changed it to Warcraft 3 kind of reforged or remastered or whatever they ended up calling it? I think it was reforged, wasn't it? If you had Warcraft, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, if you had Warcraft 3 installed on your PC, even if you had it installed from a CD, because you were connected to Battle.net, they force updated your version of Warcraft 3 to Reforged. Was that correct? They effectively said, right, we're going to update it from this to this. It has to be like this. What that means is the data on this disk is different to the data that you would get if you purchased Warcraft 3 directly from Blizzard. That is why I bought this disc. I would like to have access to the original version of the game that I remembered playing as a child. This game has good memories to me. I don't want to play their reforged version. I want to have the original graphics, the original sound, all of the original UI elements and UI designs, all the original resolutions. I want this. The important thing about that to me is video games have history and they have memories connected to them for when you played them. So we don't want companies to give us the rights to games. We just want the ability to play the games as we remembered. You have installed it from the CD right now. It doesn't update. You actually need a workaround to update it to Reforge. Okay, gotcha. I like that. That's good. So the Stop Killing Games initiative is effectively saying, hey, if you've put time and effort and energy into making this video game, once you're done with it, maybe don't just throw it away because it no longer has value to you, because to the gamers and to the people that played it as a kid, it does still have value. Whether it's emotional, whether it's artistic, it has a level of value. Josh, you're watching two moles fight in a hole. You got to do better than that. No, I can't. Where are you watching it? We're all going to watch it. Hun, you've just said you're watching two moles fight in a hole. Are you talking Twitch, or are we coming to your house right now? Where are we going with this? You can't just say something like that and then leave. You can't just tell me the most entertaining thing is happening and then just say, and I've got to compete with that. I don't want to compete with that. I want to join you. Where are we? Where are we going? Field trip to your house. Let's do this. Now, I think what pulled Ross into this was Ross likes a video game called The Crew. And The Crew is like an online car driving game, online car racing game. Imagine Burnout 3, but in like a massively multiplayer, open world kind of thing. You guys, you've probably played The Crew. If you haven't, you should go and watch Ross's Game Dungeon video on The Crew. Well, what then happened was Ross said to a lot of his viewers, hey, if you want to play The Crew with me, just get a copy of The Crew. We can play online. So people did that, and then the servers all shut down. And suddenly people that had paid for a copy of The Crew could no longer access it. And this is because the legal wording of the purchase of The Crew was you're not paying for a game, you're paying for the temporary right to access the data that makes up the game that can be removed at any time. Which sucks. Completely sucks. You're watching it on Instagram, your brother sent it to me. Well, have him send it to me. So Ross got kind of pissed off that people that had spent money on The Crew could no longer access The Crew. And then he decided to start the Stop Killing Games initiative. The Stop Killing Games initiative is the idea that once a company is done with a video game, they should have a level of responsibility to set it up in a way that is still playable by the players and the consumers in the future. Yeah, it's like that everywhere. You will own nothing and be happy. You are not paying for access to the video game data anymore. You're paying for a temporary access to it that can be rescinded at any time. Ross said that these games need an expiration date. Yeah, that could work. That could absolutely work as well. Having an expiration date works too. Saying, hey, if you buy this, you're going to gain access to it for this long. How would that work with the crew? Well, if you require a server to set up, I imagine it would work the same way that playing Command & Conquer Red Alert with a friend would be. You can host your own server and simply play a game with them if you want to. It might not be a massively multiplayer server unless some rich benefactor or charity somewhere decides to host a permanent server for it. In the same way that Neverwinter Nights still has permanent ongoing servers, and I can still use LogMe and Hamachi to port forward and play with people that I want to across the, by simulating a LAN connection. There's ways to do it. Hosting a server is something many people already do. Is piracy right? I'll tell you the one time. Yeah, games like PT. Remember when PT, the trailer, was kind of created and you could play that PT version and people downloaded it to their PlayStations? And now a PlayStation with the PT trailer on it is worth so much money because you want access to that data. The same thing with Flappy Bird if you want that kind of stuff. PT being taken down was a real shame because most people will not be able to play that now. But I think that the playable teaser trailer, the fact that Josh, the mole video is sent to you, you can watch it. Oh, hell yeah. Hang on, guys. No, we'll get back to this. If it's on Instagram, I'm on Instagram. You can message me on Instagram. That's fine. Hang on. I'm checking my phone. I'm not seeing anything. You've lied to me. Oh, hang on. No, it's a message request. Sent a reel. Oh, hell yeah. There we go. Oh, this is brilliant. Oh, it's porn. I got it. This is excellent. This is peak Twitch. That was excellent. So, Josh, what do you do for a job? Well, yesterday I watched 2 moles shagging with 1,000 people, just chatting, to be honest. It was great. This is why it's difficult to explain what Twitch streaming is. When people are like, so Josh, what do you do on stream? Don't ask questions. You don't want to know that. You don't need that data. That's not important for you. Why do the viewers suddenly increase? See, I know the Twitch meta. The Twitch meta is to sit here talking about 2 moles having a fight. Or were they having sex? Who knows? Little column A, little column B. Get swole, watch a mole. That's how we do it. Anyway, stop killing games. Ross is probably watching the stream and regretting coming on now. So, the point is, this trend isn't isolated. It reflects a broader shift across most industries in Western economies. It absolutely is. We are moving away from owned things toward access things. We're moving toward games as a service, which I very much dislike. Remember, people were like, oh, in the old days, things were built to last. Yes, they were, because they were built by craftsmen. Now, businessmen looked at that model and went, so if someone buys this, they'll never need to buy another. And the craftsman, proud of what they'd made, said, that is absolutely correct. And the businessman went, well, what if we want to sell them another? And the craftsman went, well, why would they need another? They've bought the best they can possibly get. It will survive. The businessman went, hang on, I've got an idea. How about instead of making the best that you can possibly make, how about you make something that's just about good enough that people won't complain about, then it will break, then we can sell them another. We can plan for the thing to become obsolete. We could even call it planned obsolescence. And the craftsmen all went, that's a horrible idea. You are hurting the end consumer at the cost of profits. You are designing something to have a specific lifetime that will then break after a given amount of time, normally, conveniently, just after the warranty has ended, and then they will have to come to you and buy something else. And the businessmen all nodded, and then they went to buy another yacht made of cocaine. That's what they did. Did they release the Crew 2? Can't remember. You want to talk about planned obsolescence? You know what? I'll give a shout out to my boy Logitech, seeing as I bought this keyboard 15 years ago and it's still going. In fact, when I was talking to the Overclockers guys about the new PC, they were like, so Josh, we're going to give you this new PC. What kind of keyboard do you want? I'm like, no. No. I don't want any of your newfangled rubbish. I'm going to buy this Logitech keyboard for £10 from Argos. And it is going to last me the rest of my life. That was craftsmanship right there. Not even sponsored, but my God, I would be. You have a Dell monitor you bought in 2008, still rocks. Oh, hell yeah. See, this is the attitude. I like it when you spend money to get something, you understand that you have it for a long time. That's what it's going to be. We've got the same keyboard. Keyboards are cracking. That's great. You buy it to last. That's what we need more things like. So the Stop Killing Games initiative is basically about when companies say, all right, I'm done with this. We don't want them to take their... It's the company equivalent of giving a football out to a load of football teams or clubs or kids having a kick around in the park, and the company's saying, you know what, you've paid for the football, you enjoy it, you have a good time. And then when the kids are having a kick around, the company walk up and go, hey lads, sorry, we've stopped selling footballs now, and we can't make any more money off the ball that we've given you, so we're taking this back. And the kids go, well, can't you just leave it so only we can use it? Can't you just leave it so we can have some good memories having a kick around in the park with our mates? And the companies go, no. And then they kick the kids just for the fun of it. That's not even related to profit. That's just what they do. So, yeah. Sorry, kids, you must rent the football. Oh, my God, you must rent this. You will own nothing and you will be happy. Guys, buy physical media. Have a DVD player. Have DVDs, have CDs, hell, have floppy disks, have VHS, buy books that you want to read again and again and again. There is a value to physical media that you have access to at any time. And if you've got CDs and you want to dump the data from them onto archive.org so other people could play them, absolutely do that. I watched a YouTube video a few days ago of a guy that went back and played a load of random free old game CDs that he himself had dumped to archive.org many years ago. Remember, copy that floppy. Always do that. Is anyone in the chat, of course you are, you're all watching me, is anyone in the chat old enough to remember floppy disks? If you are not old enough to remember floppy disks, do you want to know the most amazing copyright protection that we had invented? All right, this is going to blow your mind. You want to know how floppy disks dealt with copyright protection to make sure that you could never copy the data on a disk? All right? On the back of it, there was a little switch. And if you pushed it kind of in, you could then copy the data. I think companies were just kind of hoping no one would figure that out. That's what it was. That's what it was. They produced them and they go, these floppies are uncopyable unless somebody pushes the little switch. And then somebody else went, can't we just like remove the switch or use a hole punch or cut a tiny notch in it that would do the same thing? And they went, you shut your goddamn mouth. You don't give people ideas like that. Stop it. Stop it right now. And then they sent the police after them. That's what would happen. Some people were probably fully, stopped by that little switch. But some of us who had escaped the Matrix were able to push that little switch. Some people in the chat will remember CDRs and CDRW. CD readable, CD rewritable. Because they used to sell CDs that you could not overwrite data onto. And then thumb drives came out, and we all thought they were pretty nifty. And we went on to them. Why does this happen? Why, whenever I am left alone to my own devices, do I always end up talking about mid-90s, early 2000s tech? Why does that happen? Although, to be fair, if I could buy a PC monitor made of slightly see-through pink plastic, I would. Humanity peaked when we designed slightly see-through plastic stuff. That is why I still use a slightly see-through plastic Xbox 360 controller when I'm playing any games. This was the peak of humanity right here. Good times. We didn't know how good we had it. Because you're old, that's true. That is very true. We did not know how good we had it when we all had slightly see-through plastic technology. And if you weren't there for the slightly see-through plastic technology age, you can't understand. You'll never know. You don't know what it was like back then. It was incredible. The wild west of computer making. Y2K could have been the end of the world. People are like, oh, 2012 was bad. You know nothing. Y2K, we thought everything was going to crash down immediately. To be fair, some people, when they went, oh, Y2K came and nothing happened. Yeah, that was partly because everyone spent ages preparing for it happening. to be fair. We did. 2012 was... There is a theory that the world did end in 2012 and everything from then has just been a simulation. Because it does very much feel like some kind of very, very ADHD child playing The Sims, quick saving, quick loading, and just occasionally throwing disasters at the world they have built. And looking around, you can kind of go, I can see what he's on about. I can understand. Because if there is a child playing some kind of digital management game with Earth, some days they log in with the attitude of, I'm going to build the best city I can possibly build. I'm going to make sure this is fantastic. I'm going to city plan this. This is going to be city skylines levels of planning. Other days, they log in and use Sims cheats to just remove all of the digital ladders from everywhere. Other days, they log in and they're playing Command & Conquer. That's the kind of thing. That's what's happening. 2012 was when the server went down and the mods left. Yeah, the mods left to a different version. There was an update. Maybe we're just like an older backup version of the file, just slowly running out. Some days you want to pour lava on the villagers. I'll tell you what I've learned about myself through playing city management and Command & Conquer style games, Age of Empires and stuff like that. I am 100% in support of democracy until I'm in charge. Then it's a dictatorship. I love that. That's how it plays. I sit down and I'm to play my Age of Empires, my Command & Conquer, any of my stuff, and I think, I'm going to listen to all my little people. And then someone from the game goes, Sire, we're running out of wood. And I'm like, back to the mines with you. Get back there. You do what I say. This will work, I promise. Then it doesn't, and I just quick save and quick load of different things. Just name your country democratic something and it's fine. That's how you do it. That's how you get around the rules. No wood for you anymore. Find more resources, peasant. Yeah. I would hate to be a regular guy in a country ran by me. That's what I'm getting at here. That's what I understand. If it was a country ran by me, I would always be constructing additional pylons. All the time. Now let's just link this back to Ross Scott in a way that I'm going to be able to do. There's an old saying, anyone who desires power should be in no way be allowed to have it. We have often found that people who spend their lives trying to put themselves in positions of power over other people are the worst people to be in positions of power. We don't want that. Ross, I was speaking to him briefly yesterday to test the stream. Ross in no way wants to be the champion for Stop Killing Games. Like I said to him, did you intend to lead this charge? And he went, I still don't want to. And the fact that he doesn't want to is, ironically, exactly the reason he should be at the front line doing this. That's what it is. When we say, hey Ross, do you want all this power? Nope. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. That's what we need. Will his conversation with Ross be on the Josh Drive Stage channel? Probably.
Okay, so we just talked a lot about